Oh, let us know when we're streaming, Andy.
We are now live.
Great. Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone for the Operations Policy and Planning Committee meeting for Monday, January the 11th. We are broadcasting via YouTube, and if you have any questions pertaining to the agenda items, we have a question period email for you that you can send your questions to, and we'll read them out at the end of the meeting. The address is questionperiod@sd61.bc.ca. Again, that's questionperiod@sd61.bc.ca. I just want to acknowledge our traditional territories. The Greater Victoria School District wishes to recognize and acknowledge the Esquimalt and Songhees nations on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. Before we approve the agenda, with the committee's approval or indulgence, I would like to suggest that we move F2 up on the agenda to show up between D and E. If there's no objections to that, we're going to go ahead and do that. It was a fairly large report business left from the previous meeting that we didn't get to. So I want to make sure we have time to fulsome discussion for that one. So if I don't see any hands to the contrary, could I have someone move approval of the amended agenda?
I would also like to amend the agenda.
Yes.
I would like to move E1 to follow H2. So all of E1 to follow H2.
Is there any discussion on that? Okay. E1 to H2. Okay, can I have approval of the amended agenda? Trustee Painter, thank you. Rob Painter, thank you. All those in favor? And that's everybody. Why am I not seeing everybody? Okay. Approval of the minutes of December the 7th. Do I have approval?
Me to move that?
Yes, thank you. I can't see you. I'm not sure why.
Okay, I'll start.
There you are. There you are. Okay. Okay. Any business arising from the minutes?
I did have one. Thank you. I had one question of clarification that came up after the presentation, which I think was actually in ed policy, but was originally in ops from HDR for the Vic High project. And my question was, they made a lot of comments about the multi-purpose spaces. And I'm just wondering, because I believe that there was comments that this was the Intercultural Association. And I'm wondering, have we already entered into agreements with any other organization to have partnerships with the Vic High? Or is that just we are hoping to do that?
This is pertaining to the business arising from the minutes for the presentation. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Correct. Okay. So I'm just wondering if we have an answer to that.
Secretary Treasurer?
We have not entered into any agreements. We are waiting approval of our NLC proposal from the ministry before we can go forward with any of the funding or the items in the NLC. And the multi-purpose space as it stands in Vic High, as I understand it, is the multi-purpose space, and the ICA would be a different space. Chuck may be able to confirm that.
Okay, maybe I'll wait and ask during that area, but thank you.
Okay, again, do I have Trustee Duncan's hand up for business arising?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just under O, on page 7 of the minutes, page 11 of the current pack-up, we had under general announcements that the questions and answers from the public that were submitted during the last ops meeting would be brought forward during this meeting. And I just wanted to flag that.
Yes, and they will be posted to the website tomorrow morning. It's fairly lengthy. It's pages and pages of questions and answers. So the Secretary Treasurer has been preparing that, and it will be on the website tomorrow morning under For the Record. Trustee Rob Painter.
Yeah, hi there. I believe I raised this, but I didn't take adequate notes. Under D for Advocacy Subcommittee, I had a question about the status of a motion that was referred. It had to do with writing a letter to the ministry to consider adjusting dual dogwood requirements due to the district's inability to support remote French immersion instruction.
So you want to know the status of where that letter is?
Yeah,
where that
it was
motion is?
referred to advocacy, I do recall.
Actually, I can speak to them.
Thank you, Trustee Whitaker.
So it was actually passed at Ed Policy, and then it dropped off and it was brought back to the board, I believe, either in November or December, and was defeated at that time.
Okay, thanks very much. I'll
You're
check my
welcome.
records.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to presentations to the committee, and we'd like to welcome Abby Henry, one of our students on Climate Action Plan. And due to the length of our agenda, I was hoping that we could try and keep it to about 5 minutes if that's at all possible. So welcome to the committee. Go.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Erin.
I'm Abby.
Sorry.
I'd like to recognize and acknowledge the beautiful Songhees and Esquimalt Nations territory that we all live on. This is the third time I have spoken to the school board on the topic of the climate emergency. First, I asked you to declare a climate emergency along with Parents for Climate members, which you voted to do unanimously. The following school year, I spoke again asking for a climate action plan that would help protect the community and the students against the climate catastrophe. In the depths of quarantine, the thought of climate action and the climate emergency was not on everyone's minds. At least for me, it wasn't as much as it had been. The pandemic was and still is making close to everything in our lives more challenging. I can imagine for the school board figuring out how to deal with the pandemic and education system is very challenging. But even as we deal with the pandemic, we are still in a very real, very threatening climate emergency. I don't want to have to ask you again, District 61 needs a climate plan. If it will take a dedicated working group to come up with bold solutions as Nicole Duncan proposed, then I support her motion. I have searched through your website, clicked all the links I could see, and I still couldn't find a climate plan. In October 2008, a policy regarding energy and environment and climate change was written and posted on the school board website, Policy 421.622. The guiding principles of this policy are: 1, to integrate environmentally sustainable considerations into all our business decisions. 2, to ensure staff, students, and parents are fully aware of our policy actions and results. 3, to make suppliers and clients aware of our policy and encourage them to adopt or sound sustainable environmental management practices. 4, to review, report, and continually strive to improve our environmental sustainability performance. For reference, I was 16 months old in October 2008. When this was written, almost 13 years later, there has been significant change. No significant change. Then in 2019, the board declared a climate emergency and approved this motion: that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, recognize that the breakdown of the stable climate and sea level under which human life has developed constitutes an emergency, that in declaring a climate emergency, the board: A, direct the superintendent to develop a climate action plan that establishes targets and strategizes commensurate with the intergovernmental panel on climate change's call to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. B, direct the superintendent to report back on specific actions and resources that could be included in future correspondence to the provincial or federal government. And C, demonstrate leadership by directing the board chair to write letters to other school boards, local MLAs, and provincial government, encouraging them to declare climate emergencies and develop targets and strategies to combat climate change. Almost a year later, the plan has not been developed for what I can see. Second, if Shelley Green has reported back on specific actions and resources, we would like to see those. If Jordan Waters has written letters to other school boards, MLAs, and provincial governments, I would like her to speak to that. As a student, I want to look up to the school board, to rely on the school board to protect the students. But how can I do that if after declaration from you of a climate emergency and demand from the community, we're still not seeing bold and effective climate action and a secure climate plan to try to fight this together? How am I supposed to rely on the school board for help if it seems my peers are doing more than you, the leaders in the community who have the power to make changes the students do not? There is no way we can create a healthy planet with major changes to the way we do things and without leaders like you taking action. We need you on board and there to fight this climate emergency with the community. We need you to help educate the students about climate change, to make sure the teachers know how to educate. We need you. And it's disappointing to not see the school board fighting. Please, I am done waiting. You need to act because we are living in an emergency. Because to me, the word emergency means we need to do something. So do something. Thanks for your time and for hearing this, and I hope you listen.
Thanks very much, Abby, for your presentation. We will be discussing it later on in the agenda with Trustee Duncan's motion. So I really appreciate you coming and speaking to us tonight, and look forward to the discussion as soon as we get to that part in the agenda. So thanks very much for joining us. We'll be moving on to Superintendent's report, recognition of student representative.
I want to welcome Annika once again to our ops meeting. Great to have you here. And as we've said once before, just for anybody who's not aware of our students who attend these meetings, Ed, Ops, and our board meeting, they attend the Student Voice Forum that we have on a regular basis to talk about things that we want to talk about. And it's great to have your voice here. And as you know, feel free to chime in if you've got thoughts or ideas as the meeting goes along. Great to see you.
Thank you. Welcome, Annika. We have nothing under personnel items, and now we're moving to F2, which we moved up on the agenda to SHOP's audit findings and status report. So I'll turn it over to the Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you very much, Chair Leonard. Beginning on page 81 of your board pack-up is the SHOP's in School District number 61 audit findings and status report. This was originally brought to you on December 7th, but due to time was postponed until today's meeting. I would like to thank Director of Facilities, Chuck Morris, and his team, and especially our Manager of Minor Capital, Marnie Vistis-Harwood, who prepared many of the schedules, along with Mark P., Blair Higgs, Colin Roberts, Justin Taylor, for meeting, I think 5 to 6 times, preparing flow charts and procedures and some of the outcomes of the recommendations you see here today. In 2017, SHOP teachers created a baseline of equipment for SHOPs. We recognized that dust collectors were undersized due to new WorkSafe regulations, as well as an industrial accident in Prince George involving a sawmill explosion around dust collectors. In order to stay in compliance with our SHOPs, we will require a significant investment, as is laid out in the report. We are suggesting about $1.2 million a year in order to meet programming and safety and liability compliance. In the wood shops, we spent approximately $1 million to date upgrading shops, and we estimate we have about $8.7 million more to spend outstanding on that shop audit. And in terms of metal, we've spent about $400,000 on upgrading shops, and we estimate we have about $4.1 million outstanding. That's a total of $12.9 million worth of shop upgrades that need to be done in order to comply with today's code, WCB, WorkSafe compliance, etc. The board has used various sources of funding in the past, including the Youth Trades Capital Equipment Program that is set out in the report, which is a limited, not a renewable amount of funding through AFG as well, where we can in terms of upgrading some of the infrastructure like dust collectors or sweeps, things like that. But it will need some other kind of attention, such as annual operating budget contributions, advocacy, surplus appropriation, etc. So we need to turn our mind to budget in terms of how to fund the upgrading of our shops. We do have a new process for new equipment that we'll be implementing as soon as we can meet with shop teachers and the shop's auditor. This will give the teachers access to complete a service request when they notice something that is wrong with their equipment or that needs attention in their shop. And this form will also allow, and a new form that will allow teachers to request new equipment, but it will take into account the entire cost of the equipment in terms of any electrical upgrades, labor, service, etc. So we need to make sure that we are not adding equipment for adding equipment's sake, but that it's added safely and meets compliance. We know that shops are a shared responsibility. The teacher is responsible for program and general housekeeping in their shops, and the district is tasked with safety and liability. And therefore, we've also wanting to put into place a monthly inspection process, which is outlined in the report, so that we are aware of these responsibilities and we're attending to them on an ongoing basis. Shops are important but underfunded, and we have provided the organization with 10 recommendations that you can see in the report. The sequencing of those recommendations will be first recommendation number 10. We need to find out of the excess inventory in our shops, whether they are excess in terms of health and safety and compliance. Otherwise, we may need to remove some equipment. Sequence number 2 will be recommendation number 1, staff develop a priority replacement plan. And we've provided a sample in Appendix G on page 93. The third priority or sequencing of recommendations are recommendations 2 and 3. So we want to get the principals, vice principals, shop teachers, and the audit consultant together to talk about how to move forward. And some of the changes that we're putting in place in terms of the form, flow chart, the service requests, and the inspections. The fourth priority is recommendation number 4, the refresh cycle of 1.2 million a year to be considered at budget time, and the addition of 1 facility staff in order to perform inspections. The fifth priority would be recommendation number 9, an administrative procedure. Sixth in the sequencing is recommendation number 5. Again, when we get to summer and we're talking about our surplus appropriation that the board considers shops in any one-time surplus money that's available. Priority or sequence number 7 is recommendation number 6, where we attend to orienting new shop teachers to the district. The 8th sequencing is recommendation number 7, where we make sure that we're taking advantage of any provision of professional development opportunities and that become a foci of the planning for any school year. And finally, the last sort of in the sequence is recommendation number 8, that district shops audits occur every 5 years. I have sent a calendar invite to Chuck Morris for 5 years from now, as well as some of his staff, understanding that some of the perhaps less seasoned employees at facilities may be able to conduct an audit in 5 years, whereas perhaps some of us more seasoned employees will not be here to attend to that calendar invite. And that is a brief summary of the SHOPS report.
Thank you. There's a lot of information and a lot of people responsible for the information in front of us. So I know I've got a couple of questions coming from trustees. So I just wanted to thank everybody for their tremendous work in preparing this all and the recommendations before us. Trustee Rob Painter and then Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, I'll try to pace myself, but just as a start, about 3 or 4 recommendations into that, I finally realized I needed to get this down in order. Could the Secretary Treasurer just give the number, the sequence of the recommendations one more time, just so that I can get it straight in my own head?
I wrote it down quickly if you want.
Please.
10, 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
4, 9, 5, 6, 7, 8.
My password. Okay, thank you.
Oh. There you go. Did you have a question follow-up, or was that it?
Well, the first question, and I guess I need to go back here, but it would seem to me that for me, the number one priority would be to ensure that we're doing everything to do with student safety first. And it would seem to me that the easiest things are guards, et cetera. And I did see that mentioned on a number of these ones. I was wondering where in the sequencing that took place, because it would be a shame to do an entire, one entire workshop at a time and not have something basic like guards in place at other facilities, it seems to me.
Secretary Treasurer?
I think I'll turn that question over to Chuck Morris or Marnie Vistison-Harwood.
Okay, whoever wants it.
Hi, Chuck Morris here. While we pick off the recommendations in that order, we are also looking at all of the other shops to make sure the guards are in place, find the guards if they're removed and sitting in the corner of the shop, and ensuring that they're put back in place. And the ones that are non-existent, which could be some lathes, then we have a process on how to build those guards for those lathes, as an example. So it's not like it's going to be left behind. This has to work concurrently with everything that we're doing in there. We want to ensure the safety.
Chuck,
Right.
would it be appropriate that we have at least done an overview of safety in each of the shops and have a level of safety for our students that all shops must adhere to as we start to go through these recommendations?
That is correct.
Great, thank you very much. Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of the staff that were involved in putting this together. You know, when I put forward the motion, it was on the back of having read through the 600+ page health and safety audit reports, and you know, wanting us to circle back, you know, some years later, just look at where we are. And when I went through the very, you know, detailed tables that set out for each of the 17 school shops, what's outstanding and what's being done, you know, I appreciate that there's been budget or an estimate of the costs to remediate each of the outstanding items. There are certainly patterns that I'm seeing when I look at the tables for each shop. Some of the patterns that jumped out at me were, you know, what jumped out at me when I read the audit reports, and it speaks directly to, you know, impacts on student health and safety. So going back to the issue of guards, you know, there's a suite of issues that seem to come up again and again in respect of all 17 school shops. Guards are one of them. Equipment spacing is another. Delineation of lines around equipment and safety lines, non-skid areas, eye wash stations, storage and isolation of hazardous materials, emergency response materials, eye protection, ear protection, protective clothing, and equipment instructions and conflation zone signage. And when I look at those, certainly when I read through the documents, I was thinking, boy, I really hope that those have been addressed. I'm seeing that they haven't been yet. I appreciate that they are, you know, the intention is to address them. But really what I wanted to see, and what I still would like to see, is you know, those to me are very high risk areas, right? If we don't have safe distance in between equipments or guards on everything, you know, eye protection, eye wash stations in running or in working order, you know, then to me, you know, I'm looking to assign some budget to kind of assess, you know, as I worked through those particular items, how much per shop would that cost us to, you know, remediate immediately. And with the exception of the non-skid areas and the equipment spacing where there wasn't an estimate of the cost to address those issues, everything else that I've listed off, it looks to me like we're looking at about $25,000, $25,500 per shop, accepting that the non-skid areas and the distance between equipment, the cost hasn't been identified. And then if you multiply that by 17 shops, we're looking at $433,500 approximately to address those immediate concerns. And then there's the other issues. There's the ventilation, the electrical upgrading, the finishing room issues, the equipment upgrades, and then other unidentified costs associated with some of the unsatisfactory scores that, you know, we see in certain shops where we haven't identified the cost to address that. So, you know, while I'm really happy that we've got this, we're moving in the right direction clearly, and I appreciate all the time that's put into setting out some recommendations that will certainly help us to move in the right direction. What I'm looking for, in addition to accepting that the program review needs to continue in consultation with our staff and our other stakeholders, what I'm looking for is some immediate budget reallocation to address those, what I understood from the risk scores that the independent health and safety auditor included in the reports, what I understood to be some of the high risk areas. And so again, it's equipment guards, it's equipment spacing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I put together— Is
there a question, Trustee Duncan?
There is, I'm getting there. I know there's a lot of background and setting out the context, but this is a complicated issue and I hope we take the time to really get stuck in because it's, you know, this is years in the making, right? So what I'm looking for is some feedback because, you know, I'm ready to put forward a motion for the committee to consider, but I'd really want to hear from our staff and our stakeholders about, you know, my contention that there are a number of high risk items for each of the shop. There's some trends here. And it looks to me like it would be about $25,000 and change to address those immediately, accepting that there are other, you know, higher cost areas that were going to require more long-term planning. So I wondered if we could get a bit of feedback on that contention.
So first off, the Secretary Treasurer did say that this would be coming up to be incorporated with the budget, which we'll be starting to discuss soon, and we'll be finalizing in April. So that was the opportunity, I believe, to put forward the funds. But I'll let the Secretary Treasurer just confirm or see if I'm on the right track there.
Yes, it was important for us to have a quantum of the scope and the cost of bringing all shops up to compliance for all the shops that we have in operation that are providing valuable program. It's important that we consider the budget in the context of the entire expenditure for the district, whether it be operating funds or special purpose. I would caution the board or the committee in making any, let's call them sudden moves in terms of committing budget dollars without looking at them in the entire context of the organization.
Chair, can I just redirect with your indulgence?
Follow up, yes.
Yeah, follow up. Thank you. Redirect sounds way too legalistic.
I see Crystal's hand.
So, you know, with respect to, you know, the comment from the Secretary Treasurer, you know, I'm the last person to say we should react in a knee-jerk fashion without properly considering all the complexities and the context fully. I guess my concern is what it was, when I brought the motion forward, that this is nothing that, this has been an issue for years. Clearly there are a number of areas where we haven't attached this spending we need to remedy some of the health and safety risks. I want us to be in a position as a board to be very confident and clear that we've allocated money immediately to the areas where they are quick wins, and it's not going to require a 12-year plan and $8 million. It's going to require maybe $450,000 initially, and we're going to get from that immediate improvement to the health and the safety of shops for our students. And so that's what I was hoping when I brought forward the motion to get at the end of it, was an idea of, where are the quick wins and the highest priority items. And, I feel like we don't have months to wait. So I'll stop there and let the kind of conversation unfold. But it's urgent, I think, at this point that we allocate some funds to address these issues.
Okay, thank you. I have Trustee Rob Painter and then Crystal from VCPAC.
Thank you. Request right off the bat. I found myself starting to try to compare costs between schools, and I was making a mess of it. I noticed that this is pretty clearly an Excel spreadsheet, the original. Would it be possible to get it in that form just so that I can make a bit of a table and actually start to understand the costs of one? I can see it better on a spreadsheet if I put all the costs on one place. So if I could request that. And then a question with respect to those involved in putting this presentation together. Who was the teacher representative, the trades teacher representative in that group?
Secretary Treasurer.
The teacher representatives were consulted in 2017 with the baseline shop equipment, and perhaps Associate Superintendent Roberts could speak to this as he worked with schools during the duration of this report. So I don't know, Colin, if you wanted to add anything to that.
I could add that for the specific report, there are some elements that a gentleman by the name of Kevin Blessick, who is a former shop teacher who works for the Pathways and Partnership Department, assisted with the assembly of some items of the report.
Okay.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up?
Just to follow up on that point, one of the things that I think that it's really important to take into consideration is that these are educational areas in the same way that every other classroom is, and that I think it's critical that we have active involvement at every step of the way with our trades teachers. They're going to understand not only how the equipment is being used, how it applies to the programs that they have developed, but they're also going to bring in other issues that simply may not come into consideration. One of those was raised in an email we saw today where the dust collection has been upgraded at Monterey, but it's so loud that essentially if I understand correctly, it's an impediment to instructing the students, and as well that the way the system is set up, it switches on whenever anything is used, regardless of whether it's creating dust, and so we're doing a good job as far as making sure all the dust is collected, but we're also potentially creating impediments to instruction, which is a learning issue as well as a safety factor. So I would really want to make sure that we are actively involving our teachers every step of the way.
Okay, Secretary Treasurer.
And I think that's what recommendation 2, 3, and the new shop teachers is intended to do, Trustee Painter.
Thank you. My concern is whenever a report like this is developed, without that critical input at the start, then the burden becomes one of amending rather than getting it addressed in the first place, and that can be quite challenging. And so I would hope that the teachers are actively involved throughout and not simply at different steps along the way. The final question I had, two. One was shops are distinguished between training and exploration. Presumably the exploration ones are a little bit lighter, may not have all the diverse equipment that a full training shop would have. And yet when I was going through this, and perhaps this is where the spreadsheet will help, I wasn't seeing a significant difference in the kind of allocation of equipment that a training shop would have versus one that is simply for exploratory purposes. And so that's one of those things where I'd like to make sure that we're not generalizing so much that we're losing the special equipment that our trades or staff or trade students would actually require. And then the final one was about engineering. I don't quite understand what the individual engineering costs are. They seem to be fairly uniform. There's 5 or 6 that are 15,000. There's about 9 or 10 that are 35,000, and there's one that's 45,000. So they seem to be fairly uniform in terms of what is to be allocated. But all told, that's pretty close to $500,000 in engineering reports. And I'm just wondering, what is it that's being done, and is that necessarily the most cost-effective way? Is it not possible that we could have this capacity in-house, since it'll have to be something that we review and assess on an ongoing basis? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Morris.
In response to that last question, all of the shops require a mechanical engineer to go through them and decipher the risk management report, which came out in 2017, I believe. And that deciphering of that information results in measurements taken of each shop, placement of the equipment based on the report from the risk management people, and layouts, safety zones, if there's excess equipment in there, and how we're going to deal with that, and verifying the dust collectors that they are under capacity or okay. So that's where those costs arrive, and that is the roadmap for us to move forward and make some of those changes so it becomes a much safer shop, and one that children and our own staff in there can move around freely without endangering anything or anybody.
Okay, thank you. I've got VC Pat, Crystal, and then Trustee Whitaker.
Thank you. I'm listening to this, and I would like some context around whether or not these spaces are safe for kids right now. Even hearing, it's one thing to hear about equipment replacement, but even the little thing like that there aren't appropriate guards on the equipment is pretty fundamental. And I would like somebody please to provide me right now as a parent some context around, is this a safe environment for our kids right now? And I would like that question answered, please. It's a little
maybe superintendent
unnerving.
Yeah, I think Chuck or Colin or Marnie could speak to the baseline work you're talking about, Crystal, and I know that Nicole had spoken to it a little bit as well. A great deal of work went into every single shop, and exactly what you're talking about, and looking at every piece of equipment, the space around it, how teachers are using it, and to assess basically what equipment was being used and under health and safety guidelines in a safe manner. I know equipment has been taken out, equipment has been shut down, even to the point of some of the air filtered scenarios, and looking at each of those pieces. So I know there is a baseline. That was the question I asked earlier. Chuck or Colin could probably speak a little bit more to the process of what they've gone through, but there's a threshold. And the health and safety guidelines provide that threshold for us. And no, equipment should not be being used if it doesn't meet that. So I wasn't involved in the specifics. And if you give them a chance, Crystal, to actually speak to that a little bit, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
If you want to
Mr.
start.
Morris?
In response to that, the process has taken a little bit of time simply because of when the original audit was done with the risk management people, when the engineer was brought in, and then the district staff actioning what they can action. Part of what we do is, and we're doing it right now, is checking the shops to see where the guards are. Oftentimes the teacher removes the guard because it's a pain. We have to reinforce the thought with the teachers in the shops that these guards are there for a reason. They're mandated by WorkSafe BC to be in place. So we're working towards that, getting the ones that are still available, if they've been stored in a closet or what have you, getting them back in place. And some of the other shops, piece of equipment that may never even had guards on them when they were first purchased, we can manufacture guards. I went through this whole process out in Saanich when I was the director out there, and we did all the shops like that. And if we have to close shops down, we will, until we can get items fixed or the cleanliness remedied, what have you. And we've done that already. We had a couple shops in Reynolds shut down for just about 3 months while some corrections were being made in there. So it's something that I don't take lightly, and I know that Marnie and Colin and then some of the others that work on these projects do not take lightly either, because we want to try to ensure that everything is as safe as possible as we move through and as we move forward.
Thank you. Trustee Whitaker?
Thank you, and thank you very much for this report. Maybe I'm looking for some clarification. What I'm hearing is a strong desire to see some investment and to see, you know, some movement going forward. And I see that we have a target date of next month to develop a priority replacement plan based on safety, compliance, programming, life cycle, etc. Is it possible to get specifically focusing on that safety piece within that target date of February 21, the report back in February, possible costs that we could implement this year within this budget cycle? I do think that there are a couple of pots of money that we could probably access within this budget cycle because we're not doing some things during COVID, and perhaps we could, especially based on that safety piece where it is, if there's extra guards, if there's eye stations, that we could get a number and we could reallocate some of our current budget to that within this school year. Is that a possibility to do that?
Mr. Morris?
Anything's possible, whether it's done in that time frame. We're partway through a lot of this already, but we can strive and at least come up with a partial report that may cover a broader range of things.
So maybe we can ask for an update just on that specific topic in the February ops meeting.
You bet.
Oh, yeah.
Where you are in comparison to a month from now, and the things you're looking at, and any budget implications that might be within our purview soon, as opposed to the budget time frame. So
Well,
I'll leave that with I'll leave that with Mr. Morris to do that.
Yeah,
Sorry,
if I can just follow up, I guess what I'm looking for is I want to know that on what I think are probably eye stations or fairly cheap expenditures, that's not holding up us moving forward, that you're not waiting for us to do that, that those expenses would immediately occur. Elaine, you froze on me.
Oh, sorry, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay, I'll leave that with Mr. Morris then to do that for the February meeting. I have Trustee Duncan and then Crystal from VCPAC again. So Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, so I'm still not clear, and I'm minded that we need to be kind of more clear at this point. So when I look at the report that's been presented tonight, I'm assuming that what's in that report is up to date. It's the current state of play. And so it sets out in great detail what's been spent on each shop and what is outstanding expenditure. So planned, but not yet spent. And what I see is that consistently from shop to shop to shop, that we haven't spent for instance, on the equipment guards, we've assigned allocated 5,000 for each shop to upgrade guards or put in place guards where we don't have any, as you mentioned, Mr. Morris. And then, equipment spacing, like I said, it's one of the question marks in terms of how much that would cost. In terms of delineation of lines around and safety zones around the equipment, we've allocated a cost of 6,000. Eye wash stations, we allocated a cost of 500 each.
Point of order, I'm just curious, is there a motion coming forward or a question? Because I feel like we've already tread
Trustee
over
Waters, the chair the chair is perfectly capable of running the meeting, Trustee Waters.
No.
I would appreciate an opportunity to finish.
I appreciate that. But what I'm going to say right now is that Trustee Whitaker brought up about the what we can do now. We've asked Mr. Morris, because I think he's done some of these things with the guards, to bring us back an update in a month of where he's at, and if he needs a small budget from us to move forward with anything that he's currently working on. And then we've said in all of the recommendations, we're going to bring back a multi-year commitment to discuss in our budget options in April. So I think that's where we are at this current point. So if you have a motion, Trustee Duncan,
I do, Trustee Leonard. Thank you, Chair. I do. And if the committee would like to hear it, I've emailed it to our executive assistant and to the Secretary Treasurer for information. There is one aspect of the motion which I have left as a blank, and so we can discuss reallocation of funds by reference to what is available. The Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, direct the superintendent to immediately allocate funds from the blank, we will discuss that, to address the following outstanding health and safety remediations in the 17 school shops, which were identified by the independent audit report in 2016-17. Equipment guards, 5,000. Equipment spacing, again, to be determined. Delineation lines around equipment, safety lines, 6,000. And non-skid areas to be determined. Eye wash stations, 500 each. Storage and isolation of hazardous materials, 2,000 plus 2,000 respectively. Emergency response materials, 1,000. Eye protection, 1,000. Ear protection, 1,000. Protective clothing, 5,000. And equipment instructions and conflation zone signage, 1,500 plus 500 respectively. And so the calculation of all those items, excluding the to be determined items of the non-skid areas and the equipment spacing, comes to 25,500 per shop for a total of 17 shops. So we're looking at around 433,500. So this is sort of how specific I think we need to be at this point. I really don't think that it's satisfactory for us as a board to not be further forward on this. It's been 3 years in the making. This is a commitment that we made in our long-range facilities plan. It's time to get specific, folks, and to start to allocate resource where we can sensibly do so in a reasonable fashion. And when it comes to some of the other costs, which are laid out very clearly in the report that staff has brought forward for us, where there are bigger ticket items that clearly some additional planning and resource decisions will need to be made from the perspective of the long view. For instance, around the ventilation, the dust collection, and some of the electrical upgrades, which are significant items, in addition to some of the equipment upgrades and replacements, which again are significant investments, and I appreciate will need to be made over a longer period of time in consultation with our staff.
Can we just get to the end of it?
That's, so I would hope that the committee would consider some of the, what I would suggest are some of the quick wins around funding some of the health and safety improvements that are still outstanding and do have a direct impact on student health and safety.
Secretary Treasurer?
I think what Trustee Duncan has outlined is exactly what we recommended in recommendation number 1, which we had intended to bring back in February 2021. And this will be at the same time as the amended 2020-2021 budget. So we'll tie in nicely. I'm not sure it needs a motion per se, especially dictating the amounts and what they'll be spent on when staff has already recommended that staff will develop a priority replacement plan in recommendation number 1.
Okay, so that was coming to the February ops meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're speaking to the motion only now. Trustee Rob Painter? You're there.
Sorry, yeah, my hand was up for a different reason, but I am supportive of the motion.
Okay, any other speakers to the motion? Trustee Waters?
Thank you, Chair. I will not be supporting the motion because I'm looking forward to discussion in February as it come forward from staff with a clear plan that we can move forward in a really sensible, considered way. I think it's super important to be looking at this in the context of the broader budget. We have put over $1 million into our shops in the last couple of years, huge investments, and I'm satisfied with the progress we've made and with the assessment of our staff on where we are at the level of safety. And I know that our shops have been shut down when they're found to be unsafe. That's been awful. I've heard about it as the trustee, and so I know if they're open that they are safe. So I'm not going to support the motion.
Okay, any other speakers to the motion? Trustee Whitaker?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I see that Mark Morrison has actually had his hand up before this motion went through, but now we're into a motion that I'm wondering if he's going to get a chance to speak to this. I support the concept of this motion, but I as I said, I would like to hear, and I'm hearing that there's a commitment. I don't know if I need a motion for that there'll be a report back in next ops or EdPol, whatever, next ops, and that we will allocate money from the current year's budget to this, that we are not just having discussions for next year's budget to do these expenditures. I have seen that there is some money available within that area of learning that we should be able to access, that I'm really looking for a solid plan. And as we go through tonight's meeting, I think we'll be able to see some of those funds. But
well, no, February is not the budget for next year's discussion. February, we're still in this year in allocation, so I would suspect that what you're asking for is going to be what we're talking about. Right. Because in February, we're not talking about next year.
So for me, I think, I mean, I know that people want this passed tonight, but I think getting that, the expenditure, so I'm more inclined to table this than to defeat it.
Trustee Rob Painter, and then we're going to call the question.
You're not going to get to speak.
Yeah, sorry, we're in debate, sorry.
Okay, can I ask for clarification from, I guess, the Secretary Treasurer on that last point, that February's discussion is intended to be specifically about action items with an intention of going ahead in this fiscal? I need that for clarification before I can vote.
Well, the amended budget comes forward to the board in February 2021 for the 2021 year. And the recommendation in the report says that staff will develop a priority replacement plan based on equipment purchased through the YTCEP funding and safety. And so we can bring back a partial remediation plan that takes into account some of the funding and budget transfers that can happen in this year, along with adding this to the future evergreening of infrastructure in the district for future budget years. So February 2021 will be a reflection of a spending plan that tries to address some of the remediation in 2021.
And Mr. Morris will also tell us where in the scheme of things we are in what he's already been able to accomplish on that list, i.e. guards, etc. If there's anything else that he's been able to already accomplish. Trustee Whitaker?
Can I table this motion?
Yes. You can table it to the ops meeting in February if you'd like. Move
So
to
a
table.
motion to refer that we'll vote on?
I'd like to refer this to the February meeting.
Okay, so there's no debate on motion to refer. So all those in favor of referring this to the February ops meeting? And the motion is referred. Those opposed? Sorry, those opposed? Oh, everybody's in favor. Thank you. Trustee Waters?
No, I am opposed.
You're
I am
opposed
to referring it. I think we need to let staff come forward with a plan.
There's no
So
debate
no, I
for
oppose
referral,
the
Trustee Waters.
Okay, so that
Just
was
clarifying my vote. Trustee
Yes,
Duncan,
I know. Sorry, that was my fault.
please
I said
direct your comments through the chair. Thank you.
Trustee Painter, yes. We're moving
actually,
on.
I'll defer to Mark Morrison if he's got if he still feels he has a valid point. I'll follow up.
Sure,
Hey,
thanks.
Mr. Morrison, we're no longer discussing the motion, so I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
That's all right. Joys of Zoom, right? Yeah, I just want to just speak really briefly to the fact that GPTA members are committed to safety, committed to health and safety, and they'll assess the equipment for safety in terms of how students use it. And I think it's just important to mention that GPTA members are very well aware. And if there's a feeling that we don't have the proper understanding of it, then the in-service should be provided to our members to ensure that safety is done properly and effectively. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that. Sorry I didn't see you earlier. So we're moving on from Trustee
Chair,
Painter.
I am following the vein tonight with a motion of my own. 2 points. That the 1.0 FTE staffing position identified in recommendation 4 be amended to be for a qualified mechanical engineer who will have the expertise to both undertake the inspections, as we understand they require that expertise, as well as do whatever engineering assessments are required for the shops. Point number 2, that a trades teacher representative will be part of all future planning on this work, starting now. Thank you.
So that is 2 separate motions. I don't believe we can combine it into one because it's 2 separate issues.
At your wish.
So the first motion will deal with the staffing person. In recommendation number 4, it is to be included in the budget process as it's a staffing issue and increasing the staffing allocation, and it's a permanent ongoing, it's not a one-time only expense. So my recommendation is we will be discussing it in the budget process. So we refer it to the budget process.
Chair, my concern is that we never get to that level of granularity in the budget process.
Oh, yes, we do.
Oh, no, we don't. Not in the 7 years I've been watching.
If we are adding a position, adding an FTE, it's always approved by the board. If it's a position that we've never had before, it is always approved by the board.
That will be interesting. Chair, my request is to address the recommendation. I understand it'll still be going through a review process at a budgetary level. This has to do with the specific recommendation, which is for a 1.0 FTE. I would like to ensure that that 1.0 FTE has the qualifications necessary, as we've just heard, to do the spacing, the safety analysis, and the engineering that has been identified in this process. Simply, it's an upgrade. And I believe that within the 450,000 or thereabouts that has been identified within this budget for engineering, that we can easily top up that 62,000 that's been identified and ensure that we have qualified in-house capabilities going forward. So this is not an external contract requirement, but that we have that subject matter expertise in-house at all times.
Okay, speaking to the motion, anyone?
Can somebody reread this motion to me? I missed that.
Okay, Trustee Ryan Painter, just hold on, we'll get the motion read back and then you're first coming up. So who has the motion? Can you read it again, Rob?
I'll type it into text and then everyone has it just in front of them.
Okay, Trustee Ryan Painter?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I obviously can't vote on this committee, but I would recommend that the committee vote against this motion. If I could vote, I would be voting against it. I personally don't want to be the trustee who starts getting that granular, who starts making staffing decisions when I believe we have entirely, supremely competent members of our senior staff who are entirely able to hire whoever they deem appropriate for this position. I don't think it's remotely appropriate that the board starts delving into these kinds of hiring practices within our operational framework. I think that that's just entirely, it's just not what we're here to do. We're here to oversee policy and operations from a high level. This is our job. This is what we do. We don't make granular staffing decisions. That is for senior staff at the district to do. So, Chair, I know I can't vote, but if I could, I'd be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to say that should we not ask our stakeholders if they wish to comment before we get into any discussions about the motions?
Thank you for that. Being as this is sort of a personnel hiring issue, I didn't feel it was appropriate at this point in time to ask that question, but I do get your point. Trustee, I've got everybody there. Anybody else wishing to speak to the motion? Okay. Okay, I put myself on the list. I concur with Trustee Ryan Painter. I don't believe we do have the responsibility to approve the hiring of a new staff person, but I don't believe the qualifications of that staff person should be the level that we are involved in. So I do agree with Trustee Ryan Painter on that last point. So I will not be supporting the motion. Any further discussions before we call the question? Okay, call the question on the motion. All those in favor of Trustee Painter's motion? Yes. Yes.
Somebody please read me the motion. Oh, there. Okay. Rob was going to type it in. Okay, there it is.
You got it?
Okay, thank you.
Apologies, I was going to unmute and I ended up typing it before I was finished, but that's the gist of it.
Okay, so has everybody got it?
Do you want to read it for the record? I'm sure.
Yeah, Trustee Painter, can you read it out loud?
Considering the spelling involved, it's good I read it. Move that the proposed 1.0 FTE staff position identified in recommendation 4 be amended to a qualified mechanical engineer capable of undertaking the necessary safety assessments, equipment spacing, and engineering requirements identified in the proposal.
Thank you. So now we've heard it. All those in favor of the motion?
Yes.
Trustee Painter. All those opposed to the motion?
I'm going to abstain.
And 3 members and abstentions?
That's me.
Trustee Whitaker. Thank you. And you had a second motion there, Trustee Painter?
Yes, I think this one's a little more straightforward as far as language. That a trades teacher representative be part of all subsequent level planning for this initiative.
Okay. Speakers to the motion, I have nobody on that page.
Crystal is.
Yeah, I've got Crystal. I'm just flipping pages so I don't miss Mark or somebody else on that page. Crystal.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask a question, and I think it's related to this motion. And I think my question is, when we're looking at health and safety guidelines and we're looking for input into safety, what are those health and safety guidelines, and are they applicable to kids? Are they, you know, even if it comes to engineering or it comes down to the, you know, a teacher being on there, is the goal here to be sure that we're meeting appropriate health and safety guidelines? And if that is the goal, are those workplace BC health and safety guidelines? Because they're not really aimed at 12-year-olds.
Who wants to tackle that one? Just Mr. Morris.
Just briefly, when the risk management fellow walks through and does his assessment, he looks at WorkSafe BC guidelines, regulations, and policy, which only refer to the teaching staff in there. And he follows a number of manuals from the Ministry of Education and others based on safety for a shop, for a school. So that would entail safety features for children.
Okay, thank you. So we're voting on the motion on the floor, and everybody okay with the motion? All those in favor? Sorry, did somebody say something?
Yeah, reread the motion. They're just because they're not in writing in here. Can somebody?
Yeah, Trustee Painter, can you read it again, please?
That a trades teacher representative will be part of all subsequent planning for this initiative.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Trustee Whitaker, Trustee Painter, all those opposed? Trustee Leonard, Trustee Waters, and Trustee Henza, are you abstaining? Yep, abstention, so motion fails for lack of a majority. Okay, so thank you again very much for this very detailed report. We'll have an update and further budget discussions regarding it at the February Ops meeting. So we'll move on right now. We're skipping down to E2, 2020-21 budget change report.
Hey, I'm bringing you this report for January to show you some of the changes that have happened in the budget year so far, and that will start to reflect in the amended budget that we bring to you next month. The first one is a reduction in both revenue and expense for the Art Starts grant. Since we're in COVID, we're not applying for that grant. Therefore, we won't have expenditures. Reading recovery, the contract came in from the partner group and it was less than estimated, so there's a small savings there. Every year we budget for a French language assistant or a monitor that is third-party funded, and this we only usually get one every other year, so we don't need to budget for that this year, so it's a reduction in revenue and expense. The operating grant recalc, which we'll see later in the agenda, has come out better than expected in terms of salary differential and things like that. So we have an additional or a savings of or an additional amount of revenue of 800,000. We had originally thought the operating grant would reduce by 2.5 and it reduced by about 1.7. Our support staff standardization plan for benefits, we are receiving less revenue than we have. Oh, sorry, we're not receiving less revenue than above. We had originally put in this budget change report additional revenue of 193,000, but in the preliminary budget, we'd already included 91,000. So we have to reduce that additional amount by the amount we already budgeted in prelim.
Okay, Trustee Whitaker.
Thank you. I have two questions. One, why are we not applying for Art Starts for 2021?
I believe it's due to COVID, but I don't know if any of the superintendents would like to speak to that, or
Deputy Superintendent Deb?
Yep, Deb.
Yes, for this particular year, it was COVID related, having outside people coming in wasn't going to work with our cohorts. And then they pivoted to do some online presentations, but that didn't work for our elementary schools either. So we put it on hold for this year.
So when you say for 2021, it's just for the spring, not for the fall?
Correct. That was for this school year.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That makes me feel much better. And then my
budget changes are for the current fiscal year.
Yeah, it's just where it said that. So my next question on this is, I really like this, Kim, and I'm wondering if we can get this type of a report for capital expenditures as well.
Yes, that is the intent in the Burnside report, is to provide a capital, but it would be more under the monthly financial report, and you should start to see that fairly soon. We've done a couple of iterations of it. You should see that in February.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Rob Painter.
Yes, hi there. Trustee McNally sends her regrets that she's mild ill health tonight and not able to participate, but she did ask that I check in on a couple questions that she had. So I will convey these answers to her. On page 52, the question was, what is net school funded balances?
Those are the school operating grant carry forwards. Their district allocations unspent at last year get carried forward to a max of $40,000 and $80,000 per school. And the total of those carry forwards from last year end are 1.8 for school operating budgets.
Okay. Chair, if it's okay for me to continue, there's a couple of questions.
She had 4 more on this page.
Yeah, the 1701 operating grant reduction was due to question mark. I'm assuming per capita, but
Indigenous education, targeted funds, special ed, that will be explained in the operating grant recalc.
Okay. HR salary and benefit projected surplus. In brackets, there was a move to HR labor relations, and Trustee McNally was hoping for an explanation of what that move was and why.
So in the line item above that line where we see HR labor relations, there's an increase in expense of $25,000. And so the HR department took a look at their budget in terms of reallocating those dollars and found some savings within their budget in terms of some of the unfilled positions at the beginning of the year in their department, and made a mid-year reallocation.
Okay, and her next one was the EcoScene enrollment projection contract.
This is an annual contract that we procure a consultant to help us with our 3-year enrollment projections for the Ministry of Education.
Thank you. And the last one was Reading Recovery Program, which you'd already said that the savings was because the person was less than estimated the cost for that person.
Our cost sharing of the program was less than we had budgeted.
Cost sharing. Okay. Anything else, Trustee Painter, for yourself, or was that just all for Trustee McNally?
On that page,
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just switching between this and eScribe.
We haven't switched pages yet, so we're still on this page.
I'll wait for the rest then.
Okay. Anything else from this monthly report? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Secretary Treasurer and your staff for that one. And now we're moving on to monthly financial report, page 53.
Okay, this report I believe was ran a day or two before month end, so it may not contain all of the month end adjustments, but it did meet the deadline for this meeting. So at this point in both revenue and expense, we should be 50% left in the remaining of the year for 12-month budgets, and for 10-month budgets, we should be remaining with 60% left in the year. In both revenue, with 52% remaining to collect, and expense with 61% remaining. The board sits in good shape in terms of its revenue and expenditures on its operating grant. And in particular, I'll draw your attention to services and supplies on page 55. At the same time last year, we were 69% underspent or remaining to spend. And this year we are at 61%. And this is a concerted effort to try to get across to schools and departments that spending of this year's budget should be on this year's children. And so when we see those school carry forwards on the budget change report of 1.8 million and other department carry forwards, we should start to see those go down so that we have good spending patterns for the students we have this year.
Great, thank you. So any questions on this report? This was pages 53 to 58, wasn't it? Yeah. Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions about page 57 under miscellaneous services, second line down. It talks about the ITA in industry training. I just wondered if the Secretary Treasurer could let us know what that funds.
Right, so I believe these are the funds that students taking courses through ITA for trades are funded after they are partially complete or complete. And I don't know if a superintendent wants to speak to this. But it's an ongoing funding source that career planning has in terms of delivering some of those trades programs.
And Colin, are there any other pieces to that that need to be shared?
No, I would just reiterate what the Secretary Treasurer said, that there are tuition fees that the district pays to Camosun when students enter into some of their apprenticeship and training programs, which are recovered once students have completed those programs. So it is as the Secretary Treasurer initially described.
Thank you. And then the other item on that same page, but 3 up from the bottom, it talks about operations and health and safety. I just wondered what that funds.
These are, oh, Chuck, do you want to speak to that or? I can if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So these would be outside contractors that we would bring in to help with some of our occupational health and safety programming that we offer to employees.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Whitaker?
Thank you. On the same page, and I don't have your page numbers. I don't know what you guys are looking at, but
What's
I
it say across the top.
No, I'm doing it through eScribe, so I don't think I get page numbers. But anyway,
No,
sorry.
What is it? What does it say across the top of what you're looking at?
I'm on the same page. So anyway, my question is actually through the chair. I would like to direct to Trustee Ryan Painter, because I know that, again, we are once again paying for MDI and PSI. And I note that we have a resolution that went to the BCSTA. So I just wanted to point that out, and it reminded me that we have that. And if Ryan could take some time and just sort of investigate where that is, and if further advocacy needs to happen on that motion, that would be greatly appreciated. And maybe if you could let me know what happened there would be great.
Trustee Ryan Painter.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, to Trustee Whitaker, it's something that I've been keeping an eye on, not just because I believe in actually what it's advocating for, but also because it came from us. What happened with a lot, and as I'm the chair of the legislative committee at BCSTA, there were motions that were brought forward for review at provincial council, and then there were motions that were sent forward to potentially come forward at the next AGM. So I will have a look back and reinvestigate. My immediate recollection is that this will likely be coming forward at next AGM because it has been put forward as not an extraordinary motion. I think that's how it's called. But I'll have to refresh my memory. My apologies for not knowing off the top of my head, but as clear as I can recall, it will be coming to AGM, but I can definitely report back.
Okay.
So
Trustee Whitaker?
Just one more question while we're just playing within the budget. I am wondering if somewhere in here I can see what the professional development fund is for currently sitting at for trustees, but I don't think it's on there.
It's not broken out, but I can let you know that the balance in that budget is $16,862 left to be spent for this fiscal year, and we've spent $1,138 so far.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Trustee Painter, Rob Painter.
Yes, I'm doing my delegated duty here. I believe I have an understanding of what interest line is, but on page 54, I'm asked for clarifications of lines 170, 193. Well, I'll just start with 170 and I'll go through if that's acceptable.
170 is that French monitor that I talked about in the amended budget, or in the budget report that we budget for every year, but we are not getting one this year. We're not, we get funding every other year, and therefore that is a blank line, whereas last year we did have some expenditure there.
Perfect, thank you. 193 was the next question.
I don't see 193.
Yeah, I'm trying to see that too, and I don't see it either.
All of the other numbers that she had written aren't on our listing, so I'm not quite sure.
Well, considering the size of the font on my page, I'm not surprised. I did note that she had a question on page 55, but it was, she said 445, but it was actually
that's agent fees. Yeah, 448.
Agent fees. What do agent fees entail?
Agent fees are commissions we pay to foreign consultants in our ISP program.
Thank you. And moving to page 56, question was asked about, please clarify what inclusion services entail.
So this is our, this report on page 56 are the November miscellaneous services according to the ministry's account structure called function program, where 102 is classroom instruction, 110 to 119-ish is inclusion. So that has anything to do with special ed.
Okay. I expect there are going to be similar questions. Questions were also raised about school admin, ed admin, and governance. Is that
school administration is function program 141, and these are sort of overhead costs that every school will have. It could be anything from photocopying to telephones to clerical staff, etc. So this in particular may be some sort of miscellaneous fee that they pay out of their sort of overhead or operating of their office.
Okay.
Educational admin is similar, but that's at the board office level. This is function program 411. So this would be in the learning department here at Tolme.
Okay, thank
governance
you.
Is 440, the board's budget.
Thank you. And then I believe let's see, I think we've gotten there. In 57, the question was raised, why is reading recovery teacher leader salary claimed under inclusion, given that it's just part of tiered literacy offerings and children aren't actually, they're not designated or anything else to receive that?
My understanding is, and maybe a superintendent would like to speak to this, but my understanding is that is an additional support above and beyond regular classroom supports, and therefore we categorize it as inclusion.
But it would not have, one would not be able to access inclusive ed or special ed funding to support that. Is that correct?
The students that take or are offered that service may be designated or may not be. It really depends, I think. Deputy Whitten, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can add to that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that was lots of good information there. And seeing no further hands, we will move on to 2020-21 Ministry Operating Grant Recalculation.
Okay, on page 58, you'll see the in green, the 2021 final operating grant that was announced in December just before the holidays. And in yellow next to it, you'll see the 2020-2021 preliminary operating grant that we built the budget on back in March or in the spring. And the two yellow columns next to that in about the middle of the page that are entirely yellow are the variances from what we thought in March to what actually arrived in December based on our 1701 data collection process that we submitted in early October. So in terms of enrollment, we are down $2.3 million regular enrollment. Because our enrollment went down, we have an enrollment decline supplement of about 0.4, which is an increase to our grant. ELL went down by about 200,000, Indigenous education went down by about $0.3 million in terms of students claimed. Level 1, 2, 3 funding is down about 0.1 million, and our salary differential line item went up by $1 million, and our summer learning has gone down by about $100,000. So this is an overall decrease of 1.7. And as I said, in September, we were expecting, or throughout budget process, we were expecting about a $2.5 million decline and had put aside some surplus for that. Okay. So this results in about a $0.8 million, $800,000 increase to our operating grant. And we're suggesting to hold on to that until next month when we've completed the amended budget. And we can invest perhaps some of that money in one-time things like shops or other infrastructure that are one-time.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Lots of information that we're getting on a monthly basis now, so that's always good to have to keep our totals current. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to E5, 2021-2022 budget, page 60, if you've got pages in front of you.
Would you like me to share my screen?
Sure.
And so this is page 60. Yep. So we to the principals, vice principals meeting the other day, and so we wanted to also update the board on some of our thinking around moving into budget 21-22. We want to start off in terms of the board's strategic plan and how we're going to align this year's budget and the next 3 years budget remaining in the strat plan to the actual goals of the strat plan and the board's intended work. From the strat plan, the board developed its work plan that is on the website for you to view anytime you like. And we're also bringing monthly reminders to the board each month. Tying into the board work plan, we have the district operational plan coming out of that and moving into the school growth plan. Once the strat plan's moved into the board plan, into the operational plan, into the school growth plan, then we can start to talk about resource alignment, financial and human resources. And ultimately, if we are aligned in this way in terms of each step of the process, we should see improved student success as we attend to the goals in the strategic plan. 2021-2022, our next budget cycle, is year 2 of 5 of the strategic plan. As a staff and to the principals and vice principals, want to make a shift. And I started to talk about this in the last budget cycle before COVID hit. It obviously won't happen in 1 year, but we must begin to move our status quo rollover budgets to budgets aligned to those gap strategies and initiatives. We want to move our good students, our students who are doing well, to exceptional, and the ones who aren't doing very well to exceptional as well. And this is the big blue sky thinking, and by 24-25 in the strat plan, this is where we would like to be. We have to make a number of shifts in our thinking and our methodology and our approach if we are to align to the strat plan, board work plan, operational plan, etc. And I'll speak to each of these a little bit. We want to move from depending on surplus to balance our budget. In other words, what money is left over at the end of the year that will help us balance the expenditures we know are coming. We want to move that to living within our means. And so this slide shows at each year end what monies were committed to the following year's budget, just to balance it to zero. And so it's sort of living outside your means and sort of living on credit to hope you have enough money at the end of the year to balance the budget that you've already set. And we want to move that. So when we're talking about surplus at the end of the year, we're talking about one-time expenditures, not staffing ongoing positions and things like that. And that we want to have good spending patterns throughout the year so that schools and departments are only asking for money that they need to complete the initiatives they have in mind to align to that strat plan, not just simply a rollover budget that may or may not be spent each year. In terms of data, we need to make, how do we make decisions about resource allocation? It's important, we know that we trust our gut, that we have anecdotal information, and that stories are extremely important. But we also know that we have to have check and balance, the data and research to support, verify, and refute what we feel. And this, you'll see us moving into more of a data, sorry, I'm just gonna scooch this over here. More of a data approach in this upcoming year. What kind of data can we look forward to seeing in this budget cycle? There is a lot of third-party data that we'll be bringing forward to you. Grad rates, transitions, EDI, MDI, Mercury, and the How Are We Doing report for Indigenous and Inclusion. And we're also trying to build on our in-house data. We have literacy and Indigenous education apps, among others. We have a lot of attendance data for our students, and we're starting to refine our school growth plans so that we are able to know how schools are measuring their goals and using data to report back to us. In terms of initiatives, so currently we have a rollover budget, and you might have to make do with the money you're given, even if your initiatives are more, or you have some ideas that will attend to student learning, but your usual budget isn't enough to do all those things, so you just have to make do. The other side of that is you might have a rollover budget that you don't spend every year, where your budget is greater than the initiatives you want to take on. And that results in those carry forwards at the end of the year. And so we want to shift to a place where we're allocating resources based on plans and initiatives and ask the question, how much do you need? We want to take a look at our spending patterns over 4 years historically. And we want to start to look at building a school profile over time. There are many unique aspects of a school that we need to attend to rather than a mathematical formula to allocate resources. And what's our return on investment? I know this is a business term, and some people don't like that, but we really do need to know how the money we invested in an initiative is making a difference. Did we move the dial for student learning? And we do that through data collection, analysis, and conclusion. And if an investment is not making a difference, then we need to shift those resources to different initiatives. And we need to recognize that these initiatives will change every year, or they may change every year. We don't want to get into a 5-year cycle of rollover budgets with the strat plan. We know that students have different needs each year, cohorts, schools have different profiles. We want to make sure we're trying to address those and be nimble enough to have a look at those each year. In terms of philosophy, currently with a rollover budget, we say, here's your budget. There isn't any change. It can be vague and out of focus, and it can lead to poor investment or neglect of infrastructure. And we can see that a little bit in some of the reports that are coming forward. We want to move that to what's your plan? Needs-based changes each year. And is the plan focused on filling the gaps in student success that data showed us? And we want to move the dial and use best practice and research-based initiatives to improve student achievement. In terms of our approach, right now we have a little bit of a silo approach. Each department has some funding and they fund programs in schools separately. We don't consider that school profile in many of the ways we allocate to schools, and some we do, and some we don't. The silo avoids big picture and organizational thinking and has little understanding of the budget and its complexity. And we want to move to that organization alignment, the focus on goals and the means to achieve them, the uniqueness of each school. We want to clarify allocations and reduce duplication of services and budgets. When we're up here in the silo and every department is allocating to schools, how much alignment or connection is there between the profile of a student or a school? Through alignment, we promote transparency, accountability, understanding, and trust. What kind of shift do we need to make in terms of improved student success? We're doing a good job. Most of our students do well. But of the students not doing well, have we improved success for them over time? Is our grad rate consistently 80%? Or is it 80, 81, 82, 83, 84 over time? And future state, we want to know that we've addressed the goals in the strategic plan. The data shows us that we've moved the dial for students. Our indicators have an upward trajectory. And we know our students, we know what they need, and we know the strategies to help them. And this is blue sky 5th year strat plan thinking. And so this is the shift we're talking about over the next 4 budget cycles. So where do we start? We start with analysis. We have completed or nearing completion of our 4-year spending patterns by department. We have input from the field. We formed a district allocation working group of principals. We are starting to identify easily identifiable inequity. Are some schools or types of schools funded or better resourced than others, and why? And that's fine if they are, as long as we can explain the why and see that that difference is making a difference to students. Do some schools have a greater ability to fundraise or collect revenue? And we also start with modeling. And we talked a little bit about this last year before COVID. Do we talk about status quo and compare that to a core plus model? Try to move to that school profile model, standard hours, or other kinds of models as we move through budget process. So this is where we see our work start to happen for budget shift. And we're just going to use SBIL as we know it, school-based inclusive learning. I think that's the acronym, is SBIL. And so examples of modeling here would be to take a look at how we allocate resources right now. And right now in the budget, you could see in those slides, it was a big lump of money that we said, yep, this is SBIL, but we really didn't know what that was until later after principals had done their staffing, after the budget was sort of finished. We could move to staffing FTE and hours. We know we have collective agreements in place. We know we have students with special needs designations. We know we have complex students with many varying needs. And we know we have some pretty strict language around class size and composition. So why don't we just throw out the actual staffing rather than throw out this pot of money that's ambiguous and vague and just set it out right away? We could go to a core plus base level of service with allocations tied to designation and events like IEP and SBT meetings and some of those collaborative events that we have throughout the year. It's another way of looking at how to staff SBIL. We could standardize our hours where we say every EA in school district 61 is a 28-hour-a-week employee or a 30-hour-a-week employee. What would that cost? What would it mean? What would the pros and cons of that be in terms of recruitment within the district and out of the district and from secondary to elementary? And would it take into account some of these collaborative sort of things that we fund separately? And then finally, the blue sky thinking and 5-year thinking, or 5th year of the strat plan, is that school profile. So where we understand each school's identify unique characteristics and resource accordingly. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of indicator of where we're thinking we're going in years 2 to 4 of the strat plan and the next 4 years of the budget cycle. Right now, here we are in the budget process. We're planning a working session for the board next Monday night, if available, and on into the rest of our process as a reminder. Our key milestones, February 1st is our Ed Committee meeting where you'll be receiving a student learning, student success presentation where we talk about learning before money. We are planning a student symposium and talking tables throughout the month of February in some form, although we know they won't look like last year, unfortunately. We want to bring you a public engagement summary and some enrollment submissions and draft one, a structural surplus or deficit. So those are some of the upcoming milestones. And again, in terms of our public engagement, we'll be following a similar pattern to last year and using thought exchange, student symposium, and talking tables. And I just want to bring us one more time back to alignment, where we can see the clear path from the strat plan to student success by year 5. So thank you for your attention.
Awesome. Trustee Rob Painter.
I figured I'd just get things rolling here. Thank you very much. I got to say, I'm thrilled to see this approach laid out. I think that it is exactly where we need to go, and I'm 100% behind it. One thing I was interested in, and I was looking at over Christmas, or over the winter break. My apologies. I was looking at the Human Rights Tribunal report on sort of granulated data, the grandmother perspective on things. And so one of the things that came to mind as you were mentioning this, with respect to the in-house data, I would hope that we would be as granular as possible with that, identifying trends by grade across schools, by the different funding designations, Indigenous, ELL, and inclusive. So I think it's really important that these are small and potentially vulnerable populations that are small enough that they disappear into the mix when we talk about general trends. So I really hope that we're able to focus in on them, because these are some of the people who are some of the students we need to be supporting the most. The other one, when we're talking about funding and allocations, one of the things, and I don't know just how to go about this, it was before my time here on the board, way back when the Liberals rolled in funding for learning disabilities and I believe minor behavior into the per student funding, and it has been there ever since and has led to the erroneous assumption that these are unfunded designations. And I was wondering if, as we go through this, we can unroll that a bit and actually start to look at what those allocations would be were they independent of the per student in total assessment. And then the final one, I am really happy to see that we're moving away, or suggesting a move away from the rollover budget. That's been a particular issue for me for some time. With that in mind, I was wondering if it would be possible to get a copy of the now entirely complete 2019-20 line item budget, showing the allocations and expenditures as a dead historic document, but one that continues to have relevance as we moved into a rollover this year. And it will give us a point of departure to understand where we are moving from and where we're going to. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll just make a comment.
Yep.
I think those are all good points, Trustee Painter. I caution us that it is a 4-year window. We talk a lot at the district or at the senior leadership team about that in-house data and being as granular as possible. But we know that's going to take us some time. So you won't see that this spring. but you will start to see it over the course of this strat plan cycle. Would that be fair to say, Shelley or Deb?
Absolutely. As we start to, as we've mentioned before with this strategic plan, in alignment with the school plans and with our report that will be going to the ministry, we need to be looking at how we're doing. And so the data attached to students who may not be showing success, that's the dig all the way down to the granular level. Which students are we talking about? How are they doing and how are they doing over time? And so multiple data points to try and extrapolate exactly where our students are not doing well and then how we are responding to them. And those are the reports that trustees will be seeing as they grow in capacity, both from school level, district level, and provincial level as we move forward.
Yeah, I do understand that it will take time to get down to that level, but it's something. I'll be a broken record on that one. I'll ask you again next year. So,
great. Thank you very much for these reports. They're awesome. Gives the board some really good information moving forward and a roadmap through the strat plan. So thank you very much. We're moving on now to enrollment estimate.
So this is a really quick one. We know that we have to start to prepare for the February 15th submission to the ministry. So we've engaged our consultant to help us with that 3-year projection. And now we're in sort of the testing rationale phase. Do the numbers make sense and do they come up against or test up against our own internal data?
This is an annual thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we submit a 3-year rolling enrollment to the board or to the ministry every year on February 15th. I won't spend a lot of time here. It's pretty self-explanatory, but at this point in our enrollment projections for 21-22, we're expecting to be down 36 students from where we are today. And I do want to make note that alternative and distributed learning, et cetera, are not projected yet. And many thanks to Katrina and her team, especially Julie, for producing these numbers for us.
Awesome.
And then a school by school report is on page 80. Different way to look at the data.
Great. Thank you so much for you and your team for all of that. We are moving right now. The next one says public engagement. Is there anything to report there?
No, I think I covered it off in the presentation.
Okay. F under facilities, I reported that F1, SJ Burnside, all of the questions pertaining to the December 7th meeting will be posted to the website tomorrow morning, questions and answers from that meeting. So that recovers that. We've already done F2. So now we're on F3, operations update. Mr. Morris.
Thank you. As usual, we have a lot of work that gets accomplished over each month. And just because Christmas break holidays were in between there, that didn't alter what we're doing. It's a fairly comprehensive report. If you scroll through it, if you've got any questions when you get to the bottom, you can please feel free to ask me. Minor Capital's got a whole host of things in here, including the solar at Torquay. Some extra funding for federal funding from COVID. We've listed here what we're doing with all of that as well, which is great to have. We've got a little building that we built, a little office space inside the trade center. It's to provide us with a place where we can put our drawings, keep the drawings dry and out of all the sawdust and whatever else is going on in that building. Childcare studios, there's a long list here of where we are with them all. Major capital, Vici is the main one, obviously. There's a little update in there by Jim. Cedar Hill, we've got a small update in there as well. We've had to do some revisions on PDR just because of the ministry wanted some more information on things. And Brayfoot seismic upgrade, we've got a statement here that shows that we're under budget by just over $2 million. So that's a awesome win. Operations, which is our custodial, brief description here, what's going on. We've got some retirement coming up. These guys are awesome. Mark Baggett and Dave Emerson have been dealing with this and making sure that everything's happening at the schools, that how we need to respond to COVID and regular cleaning. And it's working out really, really well. Short blurb on our transportation. We've got an energy manager on board. We've got next week, I believe it is, our first quarter report with BC Hydro. And that goes over where we are with the mandate of reducing consumption, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and verifying that our path is where it needs to be as far as those reductions go over a number of years. Climate and energy management, this is a new one that's going to be in these reports. This particular short narrative in here is we've been invited to join the City of Victoria's Climate Change Adaptation Working Group. So our energy manager, Brian Leslie, will be the key point on that one. That's coming up fairly soon. Short piece on occupational health and safety, networks, communication, security system report. And that's it. So I'll answer any questions if I can that you folks may have.
As usual, you've been very, very busy. Oh, Superintendent had something to say.
Just like to take the brief opportunity to follow up on what Chuck was saying about the climate and energy management and the energy manager that we have hired. This has come up several times from the Board of Trustees and certainly people that have spoken to climate to our group many times. And that goal has been to hire this person to be able to facilitate that report and that planning as we move forward. And that's exactly what they were doing. So you will be able to see regular reporting coming back on how we can meet those goals, do some big picture planning on some of our future projects that we've got coming forward, and speak to how we are moving that climate emergency focus on energy management and the work we are doing in a very consistent way over a period of time. That will be the role of this person as we move forward.
Thank you, Superintendent. One question that was put forward by Trustee McNally, which is also one that I wanted to ask. Under minor capital, Artemis Outdoor Classroom, is that being paid for by us or is that being paid for by them? That's on page 176 under minor capital. This says they're waiting for a building permit for an outdoor classroom.
It's being paid by Artemis.
Okay, thank you. That was the only thing that Trustee McNally had under that report. Secretary Treasurer, and then Trustee Painter, and then Duncan.
Yeah, similarly to Superintendent Green, I also want to highlight something in the ops report this month. And I think it's a good learning piece in terms of capital projects and the ebb and flow of going over budget and under budget. You can see that Braefoot Seismic came in under budget by $2 million, and it's important to understand this ebb and flow, especially when we're talking about a project that might have gone over by 2, like Burnside. We know Burnside went over by a bit more than that, but I think it's an important learning piece that capital projects are large. We have a lot of heritage buildings that are hard to predict what you're going to find when you bring in the walls or bring down the walls. And so I just wanted to make sure that that did not go unnoticed and that it was on the record.
Thank you for that. Trustee Rob Painter, and then Trustee Duncan, and then Trustee Whitaker.
Thanks again, Chuck. Every report you bring impresses me. There's no question that we have one of the hardest working bunch of people over in facilities that we could possibly hope for. Sorry. I was curious in terms of looking at environmental impacts and whether or not the ministry is starting to move that way in terms of its costing when it comes to our capital projects. I noticed like in reviewing Vic High when they looked at life cycle costs. And I found myself wondering if things like the federal increase on carbon emissions and the impact that'll have on, say, using natural gas versus going to solar or alternative energy is something that the ministry is working into, and whether or not, if that is the case, that's great. If they're not, is that something that we should push through you, or should we be working through, say, SDA to take it up through other channels to ensure that the ministry is on side and looking at those long-term implications, not simply for the cost of the structure, but what we're doing in a more global sense?
Yes, through the chair. It's too late with Vic High.
Understood.
Yeah, there's high efficiency natural gas boilers going in there. So that will be a vast improvement over what was in place for the last 100 years. With things like Cedar Hill, we're looking at doing, moving that along as net zero. And we want to take a very valid look at each project as it comes to see if it's viable for us to do that. Part of the issues around that may be ministry funding. We may have to fund it if the ministry can't justify to themselves that it's good. It's all about dollars and cents. Of course. And they do realize that the best way to go is net zero. But when they're trying to balance the cost of all of these projects around the province, it takes a big hit with them. So our goal is to look at net zero with every project coming up. And if it's feasible for us to do it or partially do it, depending on the type of project that it is. So long story short, we're very cognizant of this, and we want to look at it in sincerity.
Thank you. Trustee Duncan? I'll come back to you in a minute, Rob. Trustee Duncan?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate my thanks to Chuck and the team for the wonderful report, and it is very clear that you're all continuing to work at breakneck speed on a lot of different fronts, and it is appreciated. I just had a couple of questions. One of them was around, it's on page 176 of the pack-up for your reference. It says the first part is VFA district survey. Could you just explain for my benefit what VFA stands for?
VFA is a group that the ministry subscribes to do inspections of all government facilities in the province to determine the status of the buildings. So they've got a rating, an FCI rating, that will tell you the building's in poor condition or it's in good condition. The inspectors that are going around over the next couple of weeks, I think they're coming back, is to verify updates that we've done to the systems, verify if the building has further deteriorated or not. And then it goes into a large database that we all have access to. And we need to pull information from that database when we are submitting something to the ministry to justify why we're submitting it.
Okay, so like an asset classification database.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. Okay.
Management.
Did you have a further question, Trustee Duncan?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Did you have a further question?
I did, yeah, thank you, Chair. Just two more quick questions. One, so just below that on the same page of the pack up, it says SPP district survey expected to resume in 2021. What does that involve?
So back in 2008, well, prior to 2008, the ministry through SPP and risk management did annual and biannual inspections of our schools, depending if they're elementary or secondary schools. In 2008, they ran out of money, so they suspended that. there was a number of us that worked with them to encourage them to start it again. And some of this was helped by the fellow from risk management that did our inspections in our shops, actually. So last year, it was acknowledged that they will begin again. And they've been here already, and there's a number of reports coming in. They're going through the entirety of every one of our schools, and they're looking at everything. It's like when I walk into approach a school, and I'm looking at the exterior and seeing what's out of place or what needs attention. I'm walking inside, identifying things that we have to do because of student safety or staff safety, playgrounds, etc., fields. So that's all being done by this group. We get the reports, and once we get the reports, then we'll go through them and identify what we have to respond to immediately and what we need to put into a short-term or long-term planning.
That's great. How reassuring. You must be very pleased to have that backup. I'm really pleased to hear that the funding's been restored and is starting that work up again. Thanks so much for clarifying. And then my last question through the chair is around View Royal. So I see a very comprehensive list of different playgrounds that are getting attention, and what the board was informed, I think a few meetings back, about the fact that the playground at View Royal was condemned. And so I'm just wondering if you could let us know what the plan is there for addressing that.
Through the chair, Marnie, if she's still on, is best to answer that one. Marnie?
Yeah, hi. The playground has now been removed. The PAC has actually purchased a Gaga ball pit. And then next reporting, we will be applying for a accessible playground. Whether or not it gets funded, we'll be seeing in about a year's time.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Trustee Whitaker?
Sorry, I thought it was Trustee Painter next. I just want to loop back and through the chair then to, I think, the Secretary Treasurer, and maybe to Chuck. I'm just following up on the cameras at Vic High and the security there. I recall this seems to be kind of an outstanding issue that we haven't concluded. So are we putting in cameras? Are we paying for it? What's going on there?
Secretary Treasurer.
Sorry, we're continuing to work through our PIA with the Office of the Privacy Commissioner and to fulfill our regulation. Chuck's been working hard on that and expects us that we can deliver a motion to the board to approve at the February Ops and February board. In terms of the project, it's part of the overall project cost. So it is our cost, but it will be less than what we're spending on security now.
Okay, thank you very much. Trustee Painter, did you have a further question?
Yep. So will we pay for cameras and for security, or will security now leave with the cameras?
I can ask Chuck to respond to that, but I would assume that we will have only cameras, and hopefully that will attend to the need for security. From time to time, we may need additional security, but Chuck can probably comment better than I can.
Through the chair, just to add to that, typically you go through a series of eliminations of processes to stop what's taking place. When we get to the point where security is costing us a lot of money and it's still there, then cameras is the next step to help us identify people. And that's why we're at that point right now where the request for the cameras has come in by the contractor, and it's going to likely be approved once the PIA. I sent back to the ministry the last little bit of an update that I had to do on the PIA that I was producing, and so I'm thinking that I'll get it back later this week, I hope, and then we're good to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Trustee Painter, did you have one more question?
Well, actually, leaving me until this point, I've got a couple questions.
Oh no, come on, let's get going here.
I'll be quick. To the Secretary Treasurer, it was going to be a I checked with the ministry regarding whether or not we could have access to the Cedar Hill PDR. You were going to get back to us on that. I was just wondering if there's a status.
I do not have a status. I'll add it to the list.
The very short list, I'm sure. The next question, following the VFA assessment, I remember when David Loveridge was in your chair, Chuck, he gave us a very sobering report on the widening maintenance gap on our facilities. And I was just wondering, is this assessment coming from VFA, is that going to be able to provide us with an update on what the status of our facilities are and how much we're in the hole as far as outstanding maintenance is concerned?
Through the chair, the VFA information they're collecting right now will go into the database, and it will recognize some of the upgrades that we've done, and through our own staff and through contractors. And it will also indicate various sites that are the same or maybe even a little bit worse.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah.
Last one, quick one. Accessible playgrounds. I've heard the term used a number of times, but I've also seen it raised that we're not very clear on standards. Do we have a common recognized set of standards for what is an accessible playground?
Through the chair again, I believe we do, and I'll let Marnie respond to that.
We do. We've had the OTs and PTs work with the different principals on the different items that they would like to see in the accessible playgrounds. And all of the accessible playgrounds in our school district have a rubber surface. So if you have a wheelchair or you're in a walker, you're able to get into the play surface. And we try and accommodate, there's some play apparatus for a child in a wheelchair in all of them.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for the detailed report and all of the follow-up questions. That's awesome. We love to get the updates, and we know how hard you guys are all working. We'll be moving along right now to new business. We have no public disclosures of any in-camera items. So we're on to new business. Trustee McNally is not here this evening, so we will refer that one to the next meeting. The website report menu and submenu. Climate Accountability Working Group, Trustee Duncan, your motion is on the floor, H2.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So did you want me to read the motion and then, give you my rationale, and then we'll open it up to stakeholders? How do you want to organize that?
Well, can everybody see the motion? Everybody's got it in front of them? If they do, we'll open it up to stakeholders first before you put it on the floor. So is there any stakeholders who wish to speak to this motion?
I can say that BC, may I speak? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I was just changing screens. Yep.
I just wanted to say that I think parents at BC PAC does support this motion. I like the spirit of working with many different stakeholders, and we're fully in support.
Great, thank you. Superintendent?
Just wanted to make a couple of comments about the motion and a working group. We've visited the climate action, climate emergency, climate planning several times over the last year and a bit. We've had it come through different venues and avenues with schools and groups, and what we are doing and how we are presenting that. It's come back again, looking for more specific pieces that trustees and or partner groups or people in our community would like to be hearing about, and thus was the hiring scenario that we just received in the last report. We also have focused very closely on our strategic plan, and in working on the focus of the strategic plan and the work that we are doing, we had entered into many conversations about the amount of work and great things that go on in the district and great things that we are interested in and the amount of time we have to spend on them. And when we want to be spending something focusing on moving pieces forward, you've heard multiple reports tonight on how we are trying to focus our budget, the time we have, and the goals we have on data, on shifting and moving a very key component of our student learning forward. That takes an awful lot of time of all of our staff, and it's a focused area. And we've spoken many times that we can do anything, we simply can't do everything. And so at this point, we have 3 consultation processes going on other initiatives that trustees have brought forward or the school district has. We've got our focus on this area that's going to come through regular reports, through facilities, which is one of the desires that trustees had. We've got our other committees that are up and going and meet all the time. And then we've got the main work. And so I am concerned, as much as I appreciate the depth behind this and the interest that we all have, of course. Nobody is ignoring that and how valuable those can be. There is only so much time, and focus on what we can do. And this would be another layer. It's very big. It would be a comprehensive component. It brings a lot of people forward. It is a valuable thing to be doing, but staff and folks can only do so much in any given time. And when we keep adding more to the plate, then we simply cannot get the same results of other pieces. So I'd like trustees to consider that under this particular motion. As valuable as it is, it would be very large. And at this point, I believe our staff is stretched already on some of the focuses and initiatives that we have.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. Trustee Duncan, I'll let you put the motion on the floor. I don't think we have to read the whole thing, just the motion at this point in time, if you'd like to read that.
And just confirming there's no other stakeholders that wanted to speak before I do that. I don't want to miss anybody.
I checked back and forth once or twice and I didn't see any. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, direct the superintendent to establish a climate accountability working group comprised of representatives from our stakeholder groups, including staff, students, parents, representatives from First Nations, along with trustees, in order to identify potential actions to minimize school district greenhouse gas emissions, plans to continue to minimize those emissions, and to meet our obligations under the Climate Accountability Act and Clean BC. I will launch right in and keep it brief. As you've got,
hold on for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Mark, did you have your hand up? Because I asked for stakeholders prior to debate, so we have not debated yet. So if you would like to say something, we will listen.
Yeah, sorry, I had a technical issue over here. Yeah, I just want to speak in favor of the motion just before this. The GVTA has been working very hard to work to climate issues in general. And I know that we believe that the district would benefit very greatly from being able to work to do this and create this particular action group. And it would be a really important motion to step forward to ensure that we're doing our part to combat climate action. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, whoops. Oh, no.
That didn't sound good, Chair.
We can.
Okay, there you are. I can see everybody again.
You're still there.
Thank you.
We're here. We're
thank you.
I've had the same oh crap moment.
I'm freaking out because I'm not techie. Okay, so the motion is on the floor. Trustee Duncan, you may open, but try not to read out everything, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'll make the assumption that everybody's read the memo. But I just really wanted to highlight a few key elements as I see it, and from the feedback that I've had directly from stakeholders around this, and also to address some of the concerns that the superintendent has set out. So I very much see this working group as a formal forum I'll say that slowly, formal forum for formally engaging with our stakeholders around climate action, around our ongoing work around planning. We heard about some of that tonight from Chuck and the team. We heard about the role that our energy manager will be playing. And I think that it's really important that we don't lose sight of the fact that part of this ongoing work that we're doing in terms of a climate action plan is the work of culture change. So it is the work of engaging our entire learning community in really understanding that we all have responsibility for making significant changes to address climate change, and that it's not a kind of, one-stop shop. It's something that we have to continually do. We continually improve upon what we're doing. And so this really would provide a forum for engaging with our stakeholders on the issues and looking for areas of improvement and areas where we can build on the plan that is being developed over time. In terms of, there's only so much time in the day, and I think we all feel that there is only so much time in the day. And, I hate to see our board shy away from creating a working group to bring stakeholders together on an important area of work because of concerns around time. From my perspective, time is always short, and so we need to prioritize that time. And sometimes that means that certain things don't get done right away, and we schedule it for a date when it's feasible. But something as important as this, creating a forum for all of our stakeholders to come together to contribute to something that we all have joint responsibility for. I think it's a very important effort, albeit it might not be something that can be addressed next week. And I appreciate the fact that there are competing priorities. In my view, this is a top priority. But that said, the only other thing I really wanted to highlight from this is that, when you're making really significant institutional changes and in order to address an emergency, if you want to change the culture and encourage buy-in and encourage people to change behavior, it really helps to include them in the process, to have somewhere where people can come together and be part of decision-making and really feel like they've had an opportunity to feed into, on an ongoing basis, this important work. And so I really hope that trustees will consider the importance of that aspect of what I'm proposing. And I will again assume that everyone's read the memo, and thank you for your time.
Trustee Whitaker.
Thank you. And I want to thank Trustee Duncan for this motion, and I would also speak to some of your the comments you've made. And while I appreciate the superintendent's concerns about how much work we have to do and we can't do everything properly, the climate crisis is not a joke. And I believe that we are hearing from our students that this is what we have adults have been saying to students and our youth for quite some time, that, not now, later. And I don't think that there is time for later. I think that we do need to do something now. We are doing ongoing work. We are making efforts. And I don't see a better way than through this working committee for us to inform people of the work that we're doing. We also need to be open and be receptive and have an opportunity and a place for new ideas and practices to come forward, new initiatives that we could improve upon. This is how innovation occurs, is because people are talking about it and they're open and things happen. And I think what we're going to find is that this isn't going to be as difficult as we really think it is, or take up that much time, because I believe when there's a common interest that we will find a way together to move this forward. So I am in complete support of this. And there's a lot of things I would push aside and push this forward. So thank you.
Trustee Rob Painter. And then Trustee Ryan Painter.
Every time I follow Ann Whitaker, she takes my best lines. I would have to say, though, that in my mind, it's it is not overblown to say that climate change is an existential threat. My house is at 8 meters, and you know, I feel pretty lucky because I've got the Dallas Road bluffs to guard me. But woe be to anyone in Oak Bay who thinks that they're going to have well, maybe some of them are betting on waterfront property in the next couple decades. Things are changing. They're changing in an unquestionable manner, and if not now, when? This is not something that we can set aside, that there's not going to be a better time to address this. This is exactly why we're in this crisis. I have 100% respect for everything that Superintendent Green has stated about our priorities. That's where we need to look at who we set to the table and stakeholder burnout and staff burnout for that matter too, that we are distributing the responsibilities for these different committees broadly across our staff so that we're not constantly engaging the superintendent, the secretary treasurer, the deputy superintendent, and on, that we recognize that we can bring in people like our director of facilities to speak to some aspects of it or even elsewhere. But I believe that having a forum where we can start to identify, as Anne had pointed out, what we've already done, and we've had some great successes, even in terms of global greenhouse gas reductions. But there's ample opportunity for us to do better. It will be incremental change. No one is imagining that this is going to happen overnight, but to get moving on incremental change, we have to take that first step. And I think that it's more than high time. Abby Henry's sister is in my son's grade, and I don't think I can look her in the eye much longer if we aren't doing something. So I'm 100% in favor of this.
Trustee Ryan Painter.
Thank you, Chair. As I'm not a voting member, I can't vote, but I certainly am keen to say my piece. Well, I have to start. I don't support this motion, but it's not because I don't support action on climate change. I'm 36. Fortunate enough, I'm at the tail end of the millennial period, so I can still call myself a millennial, fortunately. But you know, I started activism when the Northern Gateway Pipeline was being put through, and that's what got me out the door. And I appreciate exactly what it means to be fighting for the climate and to be doing this important work to say we have a future, we want to actually see it happen in front of us. The most I can say is the work is being done, and what I hear, although I do hear some perfunctory comments about the work that our staff is doing, I actually want to circle back to that and say our staff is doing the work. We have just hired an energy manager, and what I'm hearing from some of my fellow trustees, to me, sounds like we've just hired someone and they're not moving fast enough. So let's let our energy manager come and do the work. Let's hear the reports. Let's understand where we have to improve, and where we can improve, we will. And let's let the people who are put in place to do this work do their jobs before we already proclaim that we're not doing enough. We know we're not doing enough as a society. We already know this. How many IPCC reports have we had that have told us that our climate is warming, that we're approaching not just the 1.5 degrees, but the 2 degrees global warming that we don't want to get over? I mean, if it's about doing the work is happening. If it's about getting information out, we're getting information out. We had that amazing article about Torquay and the solar panels that went up on there. That made news in our community. We are doing the work. So let our staff do the work. I think this might be a case, and I certainly appreciate the passion that Abby Henry comes with, and other students who I hear from, and not just students, but parents every single day who say this is an issue that matters to them and it is their most important issue. And I say to them, let us do the work. We are doing it. Let us not declare that we have failed before we've actually done the work and gotten reports back. So that's my perspective. That's my opinion. I see some chortling on the other end, but that's okay. We all have our opinions and points of view, and I hope that mine will be respected as much as I respect others. Anyways, thank you.
Trustee Waters, and then I'll put myself on the speakers list.
Thanks, Ryan, or Trustee Painter, Ryan Painter. You said a lot of what I want to say as well. I am looking from a macro perspective in terms of what we're trying to do as a board. And we've got 14 committees going. Some of them are huge that have large budgets attached to them in terms of the consultation that we're doing. The police liaison, George J, renaming. We've got some big things that this board has prioritized. And so if trustees want to set aside some things and shift the way, then we could have that conversation. But continuing to add to the plate before we've been able to, accomplish anything, to me, it just sets us up for failure. And I want to have that dedicated focus. And my focus really is on student learning. And, I think we need to keep that at the center. I am not clear on what a committee on climate change is going to add that we're not already doing. This is an issue that is so important to me. I have a 4-year-old who's asleep under my desk here right now. And, his future weighs on my mind a lot. Existential dread is like a real thing that we all experience. And I want us to be taking really bold action. I want our district to be a leader in climate change. I see that as like an overarching goal we should be working towards. And to me, a committee that brings everybody together, I don't see what that is going to do the work. Is it a conversation? Is it like, let's have community discussions? Well, let's have those discussions. We don't need to set up a huge terms of reference and have members assigned. These conversations, our students are alive with this. You're right. They know how important this is. I want them having those conversations at their schools. I want them coming together and planning as they've done, being huge leaders. I want them holding us to account, but I also want to be very real about what's happening in terms of the steps that we are taking, which are significant. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. And I think we have to come with the spirit of like, what exactly is happening? We've hired somebody with really specific skills, like somebody who is training to do this very thing, to come in and build a climate action plan that is going to move us forward on this. And they've not gotten their feet under them. We are planning builds that are going to, really embrace this. We're doing projects all over the district. Those advocacy letters, they did go out. They're on our website under advocacy letters. And it's a conversation that we're having at all levels of government and need to continue having. And I want to have those discussions, but I don't think that a committee that's going to, committees are great to get input. And they're great to do a task, but a committee without a specific ask often just gets frustrated and people stop coming if they don't see it being meaningful. It becomes another drain on their time. And so until there's a specific ask and until we have capacity, it's not a thing that I can prioritize because I don't see it as something that's going to advance, our fight against climate change, which I agree needs to be at the fore. But just because you have a committee doesn't mean that more is happening. So I want to do the work, not necessarily be seen to do it, if that makes any sense.
Thank you. I'm on the speakers list next. And so my comments are dovetailing on Trustee Ryan Painter's and Trustee Waters. I can't support this motion. I was interested to hear the energy manager that we've hired, and I think that shows our support for climate action and how to move this forward by hiring that person. And when I read Trustee Duncan's motion to minimize school district greenhouse gas emissions, potential actions, plans to commit to minimize those emissions and to end obligations under the Climate Action Accountability Act and Clean Air, that's what the energy manager's task is. I would think if you saw his job description, that would be in it, to look for other ways. He's going to meet with the City of Victoria. He's going to get involved at that level. So there's already a plan going forward. If in his work, we decide that we want him to put out a questionnaire to get input from people and get ideas, well, that's something we can, or the facilities department can direct him to do. But I think the working group, he will get more accomplished within what his parameters are than a working group will at this point in time, because he's going to identify the things that are out there, the things we can accomplish, the things we can try and get to. And if we want to communicate that and inform the public what we're doing, we could give him a spot on the agenda, and it can be client energy manager reports, such as the superintendent's report or the secretary treasurer's report, or press releases. There are other ways to do it than the working groups. So at this point in time, I can't support this motion as well. If there are any other speakers to the motion, I'll entertain that. Otherwise, I will call the question. I'm just looking 2 screens here, seeing no other speakers. We'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. Trustee Whitaker, Trustee Painter. All those against the motion? Trustee Henza, Trustee Waters, and Trustee Leonard. So the motion fails. So we are moving at this point in time, because it's 9:30, I'm going to ask, yes, Trustee Painter?
Actually, I apologize. I was making a brief adjournment on my own time when you mentioned Trustee McNally's motion. She did ask if I could present that on her behalf.
We don't normally do that, especially when we've not been given direction by her. So what does the membership want to do? Trustees, do you want to go forward with this? Show of hands to say yes. Yes, okay. Trustee Painter, proceed. If you can just read the motion out. Or do you want me to read it?
Yes, if you can scroll to it. Oh,
Sure.
actually, I've got it in front of me.
Okay, you can read.
The recommended motion that the Board of Education, SD 61, Greater Victoria, direct the superintendent to direct the Information Technology Department to set up submenus under our district menu between Provincial School Act and trustee elections, and further the superintendent develop a protocol by the end of November 2020, obviously moved forward to say February 2021, with staff that will ensure that all public reports are placed in the appropriate file following appropriate approval receipt by the board the day after the meeting that approves receives the report. The purpose for this was simply to improve public access to the broad range of reports that we receive on an ongoing basis. One of the constant challenges for people is trying to understand where they should be looking when reports are received within the body of a committee or board agenda pack-up. We're simply buried. So this is simply an effort being made to improve transparency and accessibility to public information.
Thank you. Any speakers to the motion? VCPAC, Crystal, and then Trustee Whitaker.
VCPAC does support this motion. There are often times where an item will be coming up on an agenda, you know, when you just have a weekend to kind of get your head around it. And it can take just so much time to sort through, you know, scroll through past meetings, past agendas, looking for a report. You know, I'm often looking for Mr. Caldwell's report on the health and safety framework around children. You know, now I have it saved in my phone, but it would be really, truly helpful for your stakeholders.
Thank you. Trustee Whitaker.
Thank you. I understand what Trustee McNally is doing here, or trying to do here, and I appreciate that. But I do think that the work to keep up with this and to catalog it's going to be quite labor intensive. But I don't want to lose what I think Crystal has also mentioned, and myself, having gone through the last 4 years of minutes, that there is a struggle with, there's a struggle tracking down the reports and putting that together, especially when you read backwards on the history. And I'm hopeful that we will take some time at least to look at that. I noticed that often reports are presented in committee, in ed policy or ops, and there's no mention of it in the minutes. There's just the motions. And that, I think, in itself also creates challenges. It's just in the agenda that it's there, but then it's not in the minutes that the report happened. So I think that there is a lot that we can do to improve this, but I'm not sure that this is exactly the way. Maybe there is an opportunity for us to look at this and to include some input from our stakeholders as to what would be helpful for them, or where are they reaching those challenges. Because I can tell you, I personally am also having challenges with this. So while I don't think this is a solution, I do think that there is a challenge there that should be looked at.
Trustee Waters and then Trustee Ryan Painter.
I just wanted to add that at Trustee Whitaker's suggestion, we've begun including the reports from the standing committees on the board agenda, so that they're clearly there to create, make it a little easier to create that record. So that is one way that we're trying to make sure that the reports are more easily accessible. My concern with this motion is I don't think it's going to solve the problem, and it'll just create more frustration in a different area of the website.
Trustee Ryan Painter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm neither hot nor cold right now about the motion, but I just wanted to make an amendment. And the amendment is just to strike our district and put Board of Education, because if you go to our website where I'm at right now, you'll actually find that under Board of Education is where the menus that Trustee McNally is referring to are at. They're not under our district. So I'm just making that suggestion that the wording be changed to
Well, that's I would consider that a friendly amendment, just so it could be found anywhere. Okay. So that's not, we won't consider that an amendment. That's just straightening it out so it could be found anywhere if this motion is approved. Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You know, I'm not a voting member of the committee, but I wanted to put my 2 cents forward for the committee to consider around this. And, you know, I think that what Trustee McNally is trying to achieve is admirable. I think that, you know, we want to also keep in mind our district's obligation under legislation to make records available, easily accessible to the public. And reports and policy documents are, you know, the type of record that you would expect be made available and accessible without a request. And so, you know, I encourage the committee, if it's not happy with, you know, the exact scenario that's is set out in the motion, that it consider, you know, either making an amendment to the motion, but it consider the importance of what Trustee McNally is trying to achieve from a access and accountability transparency perspective.
Superintendent?
I think the key component of what I'm hearing trustees say is access. And we do agree that our actual website and platform can be unwieldy at times. And we've certainly had that experience as we've moved things forward. Andy and his team have been exceptional in trying to update many aspects of our platform, but keywords and being able to key them in and find things is the trick. And so changing the platform of where reports are won't necessarily make it an easier find, because we have lots of them, and finding key areas or agendas or reference points that they're under can often make it even more confusing for people. But I know that Andy's team is working diligently on trying to make, if you can put keywords in that will prop those reports up on a more consistent basis, and going that platform instead, so it would be easily accessible, because I believe that's what most people are looking for. So Andy, you can nod if you agree. And if there's anything else I'm missing, but I think we've realized that's more the entry point. That would be the critical element. So if you knew what was on the agenda for this ops meeting, you can put in that key thing, that report you're looking for, and it will pop up. And so it's more of the access that we're looking for to make it better for trustees that would answer to this motion.
Okay, we're going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor of the motion? Trustee Painter. Anybody else? No. All those opposed to the motion? Trustee Waters, Hensa, where's Whitaker? And Whitaker. So 1 in favor, 4 against. So the motion fails. Okay, we're going back up to the top of the agenda now. Number E1, Policy Subcommittee. Page 13 of your packet, if you have it there.
My apologies, Chair. I have to leave.
Oh, this is the most important part.
I look forward to it at the board.
This is my favorite part.
I look forward to it at the board. Take care.
Thank you very much, Trustee Duncan. Okay. We're starting up at the top with policy 9130.4 audit subcommittee. And this is, I'll let Secretary Treasurer introduce this.
Okay, through the work of the policy subcommittee, we've suggested that the audit subcommittee or the audit ad hoc committee become a subcommittee. The audit committee is not temporary in nature, but is an ongoing audit or is an ongoing committee that reports to the board 4 times a year. It's also best practice in terms of the ministry, BCSTA, BCASBO, BCSSA, joint financial health. And so it's not really going away. So there's no point to continue to call it an ad hoc committee with a finite amount of work to do or a finite timeline. In my opinion, and with the support of the sub-policy committee or the ad hoc, no, the policy subcommittee, we're asking that the audit committee become a subcommittee.
What I'm going to do with this portion of the agenda to move things along, and some of them are fairly cut and dried, is I'm going to ask if any stakeholders have any questions on this motion, and then we're going to have somebody put the motion right on the floor, and then we're going to get into debate. Rather than, we've had input from a lot of these already. So is there any stakeholders that have any input or questions at this point in time for this one? Okay, could somebody from the committee put the motion on the floor? Trustee Waters, thank you very much. So bylaw 9130.4 audit subcommittee is on the floor. Any discussion? Trustee Whitaker and then Painter, Rob Painter.
Yeah, first I want to know, has this been vetted by the audit committee? Or is this just coming out of policy? So
no, it went through the audit committee. Yep.
Okay.
As well as
although
committee.
Point of clarification, it was discussed at the audit committee. I don't recall that we moved a motion to present it to ops or anything like that, though.
But have you reviewed these points?
Yes. Oh, sorry, Secretary Treasurer.
It's a direct copy and paste from the ad hoc committee, just a change of the type of committee. And I thought by consensus in audit committee, we said, yep, that's a good idea. Let's go with that. So I could have heard that wrong, but it wasn't a formal motion, but it was definitely supported at audit, I thought.
Okay, and then, so if I may, so then my clarification, because before it was an ad hoc committee, what I'm looking for is that there's several things that this committee is going to do that I think should still be presented to the board. So I think I've got C being the first one, review quarterly financial reports. Because it's reviewed by the audit committee, it's still going to come to the board, or does this?
Yep.
Okay. And then in E, assesses risk matters and determine the adequacy of risk mitigation. You're just talking about the financial risks, or you not of our capital expenditure? Okay.
Secretary Treasurer.
Currently, there's, I think, Trustee Painter would like to broaden that at some point in the future. I think he's doing some research. In the meantime, it's my interpretation and the interpretation of the finance team that this is a financial risk.
Okay, thank you. Receiving results.
Trustee Painter, let's go to you.
Go ahead.
Okay, my concern and been identified by the Secretary Treasurer from the time that this committee was established. One of it was out to serve two objectives. One was to provide a forum where we could go through the lengthy deliberations of such things as the annual audit review, move that off of the board agenda simply because they were very time intensive, labor intensive, and this provided a different forum for addressing those things. And in that regard, and the quarterly reviews, I think it's done an excellent job. The second issue, and this was in the original terms of reference, although I apologize, I don't have the exact wording, but the focus was supposed to be on a broader examination of what our former superintendent would phrase as the value for money. We've actually seen a fair bit of the sort of things that I had envisioned in general terms, not specifics, but elements that were identified by the Secretary Treasurer in the budget presentation earlier tonight. So it is very heartening to see that that move in particular. I do see that there will be requirements within the audit committee to have an ongoing role as we move forward in that capacity, in that light of looking at the value for money and what we're actually getting in terms of student achievement from our investments. That we'll need a mechanism to review those things on an ongoing basis, and I think the audit committee is well situated for that. But beyond that, the purpose of an audit committee goes beyond strictly looking at the financial audits. And is intended at a corporate level, et cetera, to be part of an ongoing risk management framework for an institution, or well, a corporation or whatever organization it serves. The goal there is to actually go through the process of identifying what our potential risks are. And those might not be limited simply to financial. It might be things like our graduation rates.
Can I ask you a question, Trustee Painter? I'm going to ask you a question though. Right now, the one that we have before us is basically to do with our finances. If we pass this, and then at some point in time, you have motions to address the capital side of it or the other risk management side of it, I think that would be the next discussion at another time. Right now, we need this to be on the books before we can add things to it, because we're not there yet.
I would disagree with that assessment, Trustee Leonard. We already have a terms of reference that works. Changing this to a standing committee, while I agree with that, I think we should simply be shifting the existing terms of reference and working from that. I don't
Is there a
agree
motion, Trustee Painter?
Well,
I'm responding to the chair. I do not agree with the proposal. I do not agree with the proposal. I'm speaking against the motion. How's that?
Okay,
I do not agree with the proposal that we should eliminate certain functions from a committee only to reinvent them or reestablish them at a later time if and when we decide that there's a need. I think we have the capacity now, and what we should be doing is putting effort into making them a part of our ongoing work. With respect to E specifically, risk matters in absence of a fully developed risk management strategy, I feel is premature. And I think that that's something that is within the capacity of the audit committee to undertake. And certainly that would be something that would have to come back to committee and board for acceptance before moving forward. I'm not quite sure what the capital M management means, and if we're going to be using that as a term to refer to senior administration or district staff or something else, then I think we should probably define it somewhere, just to make sure there's no confusion. I am concerned that as it's written, the committee has no capacity to undertake examinations. It can only receive the work from staff. I believe that it needs to be able to scope and define operational audits, not simply receive the results and ongoing updates. I just don't think that that's a useful role for this one. If we're simply receiving information, then get rid of the committee and put it back in ops or something. Finally, I am concerned that perhaps with respect or going beyond the annual audit review and the quarterly financials, I really think that we're moving significantly away from our established practices by having a two-person committee report directly to the board. When all of our committees operate on at least 4, so we have half, and plus the chair at the chair's discretion to participate in discussions before it comes forward to the board. So with the exception of those 2 points, I think that we're getting ahead of ourselves by empowering the audit committee to act in that fashion. And one of the big concerns I have there is that as the audit committee is typically operating in private, as some of the matters are of a confidential nature, we potentially have we could run the risk of completely bypassing any kind of public engagement or accessibility opportunities, and I really think that that's something that we need to be concerned with. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, comments? Trustee Whitaker, and then we're going to call the question.
Thanks. I just want to follow up. So I'm not really sure I understood all of Trustee Painter's concerns, but what I will say is that when I read this, my concern with this, as you move forward, is the amount of responsibility that seems to be getting delegated to this committee. Well, I really appreciate the work coming and being done in a committee. I just want to ensure that we aren't delegating board responsibility to the committee, and that that everything will still come to the board, right? I think what Rob is saying, that there's some conversations that aren't in public. So as long as the reporting is coming out of that committee, I'm fine with it. But I just want to publicly say that would be my concern, that the board isn't delegating too much responsibility to this committee. That is their responsibility.
This is currently what the committee is doing, and the committee then reports everything that we do to the board.
Understood.
Yep. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of this motion? And I'm missing Trustee Henza. Oh, Trustee Henza, Waters, Whitaker, and Leonard. And those opposed? Trustee Painter. Okay, thank you very much. Bylaw 1330, community use of facilities. Any discussion from any of our stakeholder groups before we put the motion on the floor? Okay, seeing none, would somebody put the motion on the floor for me, please? Trustee Waters, thank you very much. Speakers to the motion. Community use of facilities. Trustee Ryan, Rob Painter, and then Whitaker.
Okay, a quick question and a follow-up. I'm curious why, and this is probably a hanger on from the past, but why do we have operational included in this? And why is there some specific nuance in place between operational and non-operational or other facilities?
Secretary Treasurer?
Sure. So the only change made here is the red that you see. And this was brought forward from board motion, but we're not sure exactly when. This was some work, unfinished work in a list of motions that came from the board. And I think this harkens back to a rental that may not have aligned with the board's mission, vision, and values. So to be honest, is it a bylaw? The policy was not reviewed in depth. We had some work to do from a board motion, and we've inserted that work in red, we feel, I think, and didn't look at it really beyond that. So if there are further changes the board would like, I guess it would go back to policy.
It was sent specifically to us after somebody tried to rent a library in Oak Bay to have a speech, and the people didn't want them in it. And we had nothing in our policy that prohibited us from renting it to somebody who did not align with our mission and our values. And that's why this was added. And that's why it was sent to the policy committee.
If I could, Chair, that was a consequence of a conversation I had with an Oak Bay councillor I work with. Oak Bay had rented a facility that was used for a group that spoke against transgendered rights.
I know the history.
Okay.
I was just saying that's why this part was referred to us.
The issues that arose at the time in conversations with the councillor from Oak Bay were that they did not have anywhere specific language that enabled them to refuse an application for their facilities. And because they did not have that, they had no mechanism for refusing to grant access to anyone who might come along. When I did raise this issue in the past, the former Secretary Treasurer Walsh he was going to look into the legal implications of this, and I would ask whether or not this has had a legal review, because the whole rationale for changing the language would be to ensure that we have the legal grounds to refuse rental of our facilities to a group that does not espouse, as we say, our mission, vision, goals, etc. So that was the key thing, that this will actually stand up to a legal challenge. That was my concern.
Secretary Treasurer, would you have any input on that?
This draft language has not been reviewed by legal.
Okay, Trustee Whitaker.
Thank you, and I want to thank you for the amendment to this, but I want to amend your amendment so that it will read that are aligned with the board's missions, visions, values, and comply with relevant policies and regulations.
Okay. Trustee Rob Painter.
Actually, I move to table this until legal assessment has been done on the effectiveness of this language to meet our objectives.
Can we see if we like the amendment before we do that, so that we
Certainly,
would only
by all
have to
means.
we would only have to send it to legal once?
Absolutely.
Okay, so and comply with relevant policies and regulations was the addition there. Any comments on that? All those in favor of the amendment? Okay, that's everybody. Excellent. Okay, so now we're back to the original motion as amended, and you're wanting to table that till we talk with legal?
Yes, please.
Can I ask a question of clarification?
Yes.
Just because legal, I mean, it's going to cost money. Does the Secretary Treasurer think that this warrants sending it to legal?
Vote on tabling it.
Pardon me?
I'd like to know, I'd like a response to my question, please.
We can start with BCSTA, which is a legal service that we have within your dues. So we could start there if the board's wanting to do that.
Okay. All those in favor of tabling till we get legal opinion on this, hands up. Okay, and that's everybody. Trustee Whitaker, all those opposed? Okay, Trustee Whitaker opposed, everyone else in favor? Okay, that's that one gone.
And just go.
We're now moving on to childcare providers, 1330.1. Any partner groups that wish to speak to this motion?
Can I just introduce the motion?
Yes, you may, sorry.
Can I just introduce it? This childcare provider policy is simply to meet the School Act requirement from several years ago. It's by no means meant to take the place of the new order that's come in this late winter. It's simply to put the board in good stead in terms of the historical School Act, and will be revised substantially based on the new order that's come from the ministry in terms of provision of childcare. So it's a stopgap measure until the policy is thoroughly developed with the new School Act articles.
Okay. Trustee Whitaker?
Thank you. So just first out of the gate is the typo in the first line, that it should be its primary obligation instead of is. And then I would like to add that, or the board may prevent licensure assets. So after district assets in the same paragraph, I would like to input surplus to current enrollment or current foreseeable enrollment needs. So however, the board may permit licensed childcare programs to use the following district assets that are surplus to current and foreseeable enrollment needs.
So as far as the Secretary Treasurer can see, does that make any difference to the motion or the basically?
I think for my own opinion, I think it limits us a little bit. I get where Trustee Whitaker wants to go. I think mentioning enrollment by itself doesn't necessarily, may not cover all of the instances where we may or may not grant this type of availability to third-party providers or other childcare providers. I wonder if the policy itself takes into account some of the intent in terms of does not disrupt or otherwise interfere with the provision in the policy statement itself in 3.1. Would that attend to that for you, Trustee Whitaker, or are we limiting ourselves by just mentioning one thing that could impact us?
So for me, what is at issue here is that, one, I look at this is going to be a policy that child care centers are going to look at to go, yes, I can do this or I cannot. And I think it's really important that child care centers looking to come to us for space understand, even if that they negotiate, they enter into a lease with us, that at all times, if we need that space back, we're booting you out, right? And that we are not even going to enter into conversations if we need that space. And knowing how tight several of our schools are that are also looking for childcare spaces, that's what I'm looking for. Is I'm looking for it to be very clear that students and educational needs of students will come before childcare centers. And I don't see that in educational activities.
What if in under policy does not disrupt or otherwise interfere with the provisions of provision of educational activities now or in the future, and that revenue obtained blah 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 blah. So you're talking about.
So for me, activities is not a strong word. I'm looking for the educational learning needs or something. Okay, I don't want a class like Central had running around without a home because we have a childcare center, right? Like that's what I'm looking for here. I want to make sure that kids get a classroom before a childcare center.
So seeing where Trustee Whitaker wants to go, can Secretary Treasurer suggest wording that would be
Well, we
something?
table it back to the policy committee and you guys come back with something noting that it is 10/7.
Okay.
Saying.
Well, that's fine. If it's a possibility, if the Secretary Treasurer agrees that she understands the meaning of what Trustee Whitaker is looking for.
I don't agree with the wording, but I understand what she's looking for, and I think we can bring something back that will suit.
Okay, so we will send that back to committee.
Not at 10 o'clock at night.
Well, you're the one that changed the order of this stuff.
Well, you know, that was purposeful, right?
Can we vote on that because the motion was moved? So if we're referring, we should vote on it.
Motion to refer back to the policy committee, Trustee Whitaker? Yes?
Oh, sorry.
I see Trustee Painter's hand up is the problem.
Trustee Painter.
I just asking a vague, not holding you to it kind of question about whether or not we had a timeline in mind for when we would be developing a policy in compliance with 32620. I had to throw that in there because I finally read something in advance of the meeting.
We're not talking about 32620 right now.
No,
we're talking about 1330.1, and the motion to refer is Trustee Whitaker. And all those in favor of motion to refer back to policy committee, say aye.
What I would like to know before voting is what the timeline, the general anticipated timeline is for moving forward on 32620, because that's going to affect how I vote now.
What is 32620?
That is the new ministerial order that came out that said, to extent that we need to identify support for inclusive childcare, principles of Indigenous reconciliation in childcare, that we need to take on the discussion of whether or not the district was interested in becoming a provider of childcare. There were a number of different things. So I was just curious about when that timeline was going to happen so that I would know whether or not we're going to be living with this policy for a little while or a long while.
Secretary Treasurer, any broad?
Yeah. So at the last policy subcommittee meeting, we recognized that we didn't necessarily have all the expertise to be able to develop the policy. And so we are tossing around having a small working group of somebody from facilities, somebody from early learning, and a couple of principals. And so I think we can attend to this work by the end of the year, but it is big. I don't know if the superintendent would like to add anything. We didn't necessarily set ourselves a timeline. We know it is a ministerial order. We know it's fairly new. We know how extensive it is. So we know we have to get going on it, but we didn't really give ourselves a deadline and would like to form a bit of a larger group to talk about it. Shelley?
And just wanted to follow up, we are very aware that this new ministerial team is very interested in moving this over to education, and they have given us the forewarning all across BC that over the next 4 to 5 years, this will be one of their mandates. So it's not going to be a quick move, but it definitely is in progress.
So up to 6 months, Trustee Painter, is the life of this one. So all those in favor of referring it to the policy committee, hands up.
The policy committee, wait.
Back to the policy committee. Trustee Whitaker, that's what you wanted.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that's unanimous.
All right, I've already moved on.
Yeah, that's okay. So this is moving back to the policy committee. Okay. 9330.1, appeal process. Okay, any stakeholders that wish to speak to this?
No, I'm noting that they've left.
They all left?
Mark's,
Mark's still there. Any stakeholders that wish to speak to this? Okay, seeing none, could I have somebody put it on the floor?
Superintendent has a comment.
Sorry?
I think the superintendent has a comment before it goes on the floor.
Before it goes on the floor, Superintendent.
Just, this was the work that we did in the working committee evening, that we need to realign this appeal process with the parent complaint process as per the ombudsperson's direction. So this was the work that you did as the team to be able to reword this so this aligns properly with respect to his recommendations.
Okay, so can someone put it on the floor, please? Trustee Waters, thank you. So we're hoping that we will just be able to go through it. And if there's anything that you want to amend, that's how we're going to work this. We're not taking input at this point in time because a lot of this is through regulations by staff, things that the ombudsman's pointed out. So a lot of this we can't change, and we've streamlined it to make it better for everyone. So if there's anything you want to change other than what's here, it will have to be by motion. What? So, because it's a motion on the floor now.
Write some motions, man.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Give me a few minutes. I'll start writing.
Trustee Painter and then Whitaker. Rob, you're on mute.
Yes, I jumped the gun there. My apologies. Motion to amend the first big red section. The Board of Education encourages, I would add, but does not require, comma, students, parents, and guardians, etc.
Does encourage not imply, does not require?
My concern is that left there, I feel that it doesn't identify that that it's not mandatory. It's simply the way I expect people to read it. If they're not given the other option, they won't think it's there.
Okay, Superintendent, Secretary, Treasurer, anybody that needs to say that that would not, would that change the intent of anything that's in front of us?
I believe that we're going to have to follow exactly what you said, Chair, that any small changes, we definitely had clear direction, although I don't see an initial problem with that. But I would want to run by any adjustments that trustees would choose to put forward with our HR, who worked very closely with the ombudsperson when we were redirecting this. So I don't see an initial problem, but we definitely will run any suggestions past that just to make sure that we get it right.
Okay. Did you have anything else, Trustee Painter?
Not at that section.
Okay.
I had some on that section.
Are we voting on amendments?
We are. So that's an amendment.
Can I have clarification on this? All of these changes haven't been voted on. So I don't understand why we would then be voting on changes to, if anything, we're voting on any change that you've made. We can't go and say, oh, all of these strikeouts are real. The board hasn't approved any of those.
So to be clear, the policy committee did not make these changes. The ombudsman, along with HR, made these changes to comply with what
I need to see some documents on that to say that this policy has been edited by somebody else and then brought
point of order, Madam Chair. Chair was speaking and I would really like to hear what the chair had to say. Thank you.
So we had a working group and we all got together with our senior staff and our HR specialists. They told us all the changes that would be required in this document to make it comply in compliance with the Ombudsman's Department and the policies that we needed to change in order to make our appeals process better for people and complying with the rules and regulations that are out there. So we sent our staff away to rewrite the policy. This is what they're bringing to us, is their rewrite that they have worked with the Ombudsman on. So
okay,
it's not the policy.
Rewrite has not been approved by the board, correct?
Correct.
So I moved that we approve the motion. as presented, that we approve the policy as presented. And so folks can make amendments and we can vote on them as we go.
But this is the document, and it's not been brought forward to you.
We're amending, this is one motion, we're amending that. This,
yes.
Previous strikeouts have not been approved, just to be clear. So we are amending what is being a proposed motion right now. Okay, so
anything that's a strikeout, the policy has been put forward by Trustee Waters on the floor, saying that the strikeouts are out and the reds are in. That is the policy we're voting on. The way it would be if it was all one black document, without the lines and without the red. So Trustee Painter has made an amendment to the first red section because it's changing what you have before you. Does that make sense? Okay. All those in favor of the but does not require addition to the line in the first red section. All those in favor? Trustee Painter, all those opposed? Trustee Hemza, Trustee Waters, Trustee Leonard, Trustee Whitaker, are you abstaining?
Yeah, I have my own amendment.
Oh, okay. So that amendment fails, so we're back to the original red part. Trustee Whitaker, you're next on the speaker's list.
Excellent. So in that paragraph, the red,
yeah,
we'll talk about the strikeouts later, but I would like it to say to pursue a resolution of any complaint or concern. So strike out question and make it a complaint. I think it's important that parents, who are the ones who are going to be using this, understand that this is where they go for a complaint. Fluffing it up with the word question doesn't, if I wasn't aware of the complaint process, I would get confused and I would go somewhere else. I wouldn't understand what I was looking at.
So from maybe the superintendent, we have a complaint procedure. If you put the word complaint in there, is that confusing the complaint procedure with the appeal process? Or have I got something wrong there?
It could, and I think that's what the ombudsperson was trying to help us become clearer on. Like I said, this one is an odd one because what we had previously created a difficulty in being clear and understanding. So as I mentioned earlier, when Trustee Painter was talking about what he did, we can certainly speak to wording that trustees feel would be wiser. And we will go through the process with the ombudsperson and HR to find out if that sticks to the clarification that they expressed we needed to find.
You know, if I would like, where I see these strikeouts as well, I would like to have the rationale beside these strikeouts to tell me exactly why these things are being removed and why the, you know, if the ombudsperson said so, then please do tell me. Because a lot of what I'm seeing as we go forward in these strikeouts are some very hard won battles that parents have had to ensure that this complaint process worked for them. And I think that there's a lot more struck out in this document than there needs to be. Maybe it made it simpler and easier, but I think that there is a lot of parent pieces in here that need to be reconsidered.
The appeal process is not the complaint process, and they overlapped the last time, and that's what created the confusion. So the appeal process is a separate component to the complaint process. The complaint process still exists, but it was meant to clarify if a parent had entered into the complaint process and or not, and was simply prepared to appeal a decision made. This is the process they would go to on the appeal process. But the complaint process itself holds the language and the steps that you're concerned about, Trustee Whitaker. So perhaps we could do another review session. It was quite a while ago when trustees went through this, but that's what Marnie was explaining when we went through this the first time, is the overlap and some of the vague language caused the difficulty the first time through. So this is meant to clarify if anybody was going through the actual appeal process, this is what they would need to know and to do and to follow through. Where the complaint process is a different piece, and it sits with the clear language you're articulating.
Okay, so we have an amendment under the red section that says complaint instead of question. And I'll call the question on that. All those who are in favor of changing the word, say aye. Trustee Painter, Trustee Whitaker, all those opposed? Trustee Henza, Waters, and Leonard, and so the original question word is there. Okay, anything else?
Yes, Chair, when you have an opportunity.
Trustee Painter, yep.
IF.
F.
It's on the second page of this, but page 20 of the backup. It says any other decision that significantly impacts the present or future educational program of the student. And program in this case, I believe, is not the appropriate term. And I would like to amend this to outcome.
That's very broad.
Yes, I recognize that. However, we've already identified elsewhere refusal to offer an educational program, grade promotion, placement in an educational program. Those things are already been identified. What my concern is here is that I believe that we should have a mechanism for appeal, if necessary, for decisions that are made that can reasonably, and of course, there will have to be an assessment, and people will, their trustees will be asked to determine whether or not it meets the threshold of being a significant impact. But educational outcomes, I think, are something that must be considered. It has to be tied to a specific decision. It has to be appealable, so it's not opening the barn door. But I think in this case, using the word program in every single application makes this more confusing than it adds benefit.
Okay, so I could not support outcome. It's too broad, and I don't know how you define it, and there wouldn't be enough words in here to qualify what that would look like. So that's how I'm looking at this. Superintendent.
Outcome changes the context of where this particular area is going. So program is aligned to actual programming or programs that are going on with students that can be actually articulated by anybody who has a concern, where outcome is a much different connotation and broader. And I believe that there would be difficulty with utilizing that word in this context.
Okay, so that is an amendment on the floor. All those in favor of the word outcome to replace the word program, put your hand up, please.
Oh.
Say aye. Trustee Painter, all those opposed? Trustee Whitaker, what would you like to do?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, 3 in favor, 1 abstention. So we're back to the word program. Anything further, Trustee Painter?
Well, I go back to the School Act in this case, and I'm just sorry, I'm having to flick between screens. But what concerns me is that the bold text, which is straight out of the School Act, if a decision of an employee of a board significantly affects the education, health, or safety of a student, the parent of the student or student may within a reasonable time, blah, 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 appeal that decision. We have that language at the front of this thing. So referencing programming alone does not address health and safety of the original direction from the School Act. So as it's written,
we've defeated that motion. Do you
well,
have
I'm
another
saying
motion?
that this is inadequate as it's written. So I don't know what we're trying to achieve here.
Okay, do you have another motion or anything else that you want to refer to in this policy?
I'll work on another word instead of outcome, but we need to be able to incorporate within this range of options some elements that address health and safety.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're not meeting our legal responsibilities under the School Act.
Okay, any other speakers to the motions, to the main motion on the floor, which is the entire
Entire document?
entire document.
No, yeah, I got lots more for you.
Okay, Justin Whitaker.
All right, so let's go to, sorry, my stuff is on number 4. You've stricken out that the appealants may go directly to the appeal process, which I believe that they can. They do not need to go to the subcommittee. If they wish to not go through that process and go directly to the appeal, are they not able to?
The appeal process, all of those steps have been taken out. Step 2, step 3, step 4. And again, this was in meeting with the ombudsperson. This has gone by them. So the way it's worded, Superintendent, did you have anything to add?
I'm just looking for the other part.
I want something to replace it, I believe. Steps of the superintendent.
Are you looking for avenues beyond the appeal process?
Yeah.
It's at the very end.
Okay, thank you.
Very last line.
Yeah.
So all of that has come out and replaced by the last line.
I'm sorry, what?
All of that, the steps for the superintendent have come out and they've been replaced by the last line in the document.
What, pages and pages away, which says where?
Very last line that says appeal to the superintendent of appeals under section 11 of the School Act. So I believe.
It's number 9. It's point number 9.
Thank you.
And do you think that's easier for a parent to understand the bylaw and the process by it being removed there? That they have this other alternative, that they don't have to use this process, that there is the other process. They can go this way or they can go that way. So that's what my concern is there, is that there is more than one option and you're playing out these steps. And at this point, a parent has an option. You can go this way or you can go this way. But we don't tell them till the end.
As I said before, we have been in consultation to come up with this document, the staff. So it's not our wording, it's the ombudsperson's wording and telling us the things that were wrong with the appeal process that we already had.
If I may clarify, I believe when the ombudsperson provided the information, it was the minimum that must be in there. Having some other suggestions to support parents through this process is not excluded, right? So my challenge to all of these strikeouts in here that are offering parents ways to navigate through this system and striking them out is that things that parents have said have been a problem with the process for years, from many, many examples of poorly handled situations and going through this appeals process are being stricken from this document because the minimum that the ombudsperson said is all that's on there. And this is where I'm having a challenge.
So I would, Chair, would probably make a suggestion. It is late and people are tired. And this is a really critical document for all of us. We've been through a session with trustees and gone through a lot of the conversation. My suggestion is that we take this document and so trustees can have a chance to read it and reply to us as our policy committee once again, and bring it back on a fulsome circular piece on any concerns that trustees may have at this point, because otherwise I believe that being late and a few people is not going to get to all the concerns that I'm hearing.
No, I agree.
I would actually also ask if this document can be given to VC PAC, and I would like them to provide their input to the board as well. This is who it affects.
They have the document. It's on our website. So
I'm just seeing that they've had to leave the meeting at 10 o'clock. So that's my concern, is that we're not hearing from them.
Okay, so that one is back. So trustees, if you have input, please send it off to Jordan or myself to the committee so that we can get some feedback in any other potential amendments that you may have had. And we'll take that. And we were really hoping to get to 9360 today because it's a completed document. How do you feel about that? Did you read 9360? Did you have very many changes to it? Because we think that we've captured everything that you had to say over the last 4 months, and we were ready to move and rock and roll tonight. Trustee Whitaker.
My notes on 9360, or when you present it again, can you please present it in a way that shows the changes?
No, there has been so many iterations of it. This was the final document that came out of all of the discussions and all of the amendments, and we like
the original document and the final document so we can see the progression.
Okay, the original, but not with all the crossouts.
Not all of the amendments. I just wanted, this was where we were, all sorts of work happened, and this is where we are.
Okay, Trustee Painter.
Oh no, I was just speaking in support of that I thought that would be a useful step.
Okay, Trustee Ryan Painter.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So obviously then I don't have the original here tonight, so we can't move through that one. Mr. Roberts, did we have any questions that came from the gallery this evening on email?
We did. There were 2 questions.
Okay, if you could read them out to us, please.
The first came from Erin Renwick. I have tried to find a record of what has been done by the school boards since it declared a climate emergency in order to significantly reduce GHGs, but I haven't been able to find it anywhere. I recall that Greg Kitchen was assigned to look at the matter. Is there a place where I can see his report or the work that has been done or any kind of climate plan?
Okay, and that would be from Abby Henry, who was using that email address to come on Zoom tonight. So she was our speaker earlier. Okay, and question number 2?
Comes from Mr. Scott Fox. At the last ops meeting, there were public questions, including mine, which were unanswered. The questions also did not appear in the minutes. Can you please answer the following question, which I submitted and was read at the last ops meeting related to the Secretary Treasurer's report, SJ Burnside upgrade. During the public consultation process for the Vic High seismic upgrade and subsequent matter of Vic High land disposal, there was no mention of money flowing from the Vic High project to support the initiative at Burnside. All communication made public spoke of money from Vic High flowing to SJ Willis for the swing space. Other than not wanting the public to be aware of this mismanagement of the Burnside project, Why was there a lack of transparency in making this vital information available to the public during either the seismic upgrade or land disposal public consultations?
Okay, thank you. So we will be answering question number 1 for the next meeting. Question number 2 will be on the website tomorrow morning under for the record, as we stated previously earlier in the meeting. So that's where the questions will be answered. So if he's still listening, that's where it will be, and hopefully he can find it tomorrow morning. There's no other new business, and that's everything. Motion to
Secretary Treasurer indicated.
Sorry, Secretary Treasurer.
I just wanted to let you know it'll actually be under the January 11th ops meeting as supplemental information. The questions and answers.
Oh, okay. Sorry, not under for the record. Okay, great. Thank you very
I've
much.
also provided a notice of motion, Elaine.
You have? Okay.
Yeah, so that the Board of Education, School District 61, Greater Victoria, hire an external auditor who will report directly to the board and investigate the Birdside Education Center project to A, identify what occurred to allow this project to progress from a proposed 2.6 million project to an overall cost of 8.1 million. B, to identify when senior staff and trustees should have been aware of the overspending and what occurred, that they were not aware or did not act. And 2, to make recommendations to the board. So that will
There's a
for
motion for the next ops meeting in January?
no, this will be for the board meeting in 2 weeks. And I also have the rationale, which I will send to staff just to redact anything that needs to be redacted from it, all right? Before it becomes public.
Okay. Any other further announcements? Okay, motion to adjourn. Trustee Whitaker, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thanks, Elaine.
Bye.